Welcome back, everybody, for another deep dive. Today, we're talking all about how to nail those job interviews in English.
Okay.
We've got this awesome guide, right?
Yes.
And it's got like over 50 phrases, but we're going to go deeper. We're not just going to read the phrases to you. We want to like really understand why they work and how you can use them to just really shine. You know what I mean?
It's all about that authenticity, right?
Yeah.
It's understanding what's behind the phrase.
Yeah.
Why is it effective? And then how do you use it? So it's not just you're like this robot spitting out these phrases.
Yeah. Okay, so let's start at the beginning. You walk in the door, you sit down, you've got that first impression, you've got the greeting and the intro. How important is this part?
It's crucial. It's like the first few seconds can really set the tone for the rest of the interview.
Okay, and this guide has some interesting phrases here. Like one of them is, I've been looking forward to discussing how my skills align with this position. So, I mean, does that little tweak really make that much of a difference?
Yeah, it does. It does, because instead of just saying like, hi, nice to meet you, you're already indicating that you're here to provide value, that you've thought about this, you've done your research, you understand what their needs are, and you're already positioning yourself as someone who can contribute to meeting those needs.
So it's not just about finding a job, it's about helping them with their problems almost.
Exactly. It shows that you've thought about this beyond just looking at their website for 2 minutes.
Yeah, right. Okay, so we've aced the greeting. Now comes the dreaded, tell me about yourself. And I feel like people just default to summarizing their resume.
Yeah, they tend to just kind of go through like,
Yeah.
a laundry list.
Right.
And it's like a missed opportunity. This is your chance to actually tell a story.
Oh.
Think about those key skills and experiences that you have that align with this role and that make you unique.
So instead of just saying, I have 5 years of experience in marketing, what would be a better way to say that?
Yeah, so you can actually use an example from the guide, which is, I'm a highly motivated marketing professional with 5 years of experience crafting and executing successful digital campaigns. So you're already giving them something concrete.
Oh, I like that. It paints a picture.
Exactly. Instead of just listing, you're actually showcasing the impact you've had.
I see. Okay. So moving on, we start getting into like the skills and strengths. And I feel like this is where people either exaggerate or just use vague language.
Yeah.
Like, I'm really good at this.
Exactly.
And you're like, okay, well, good. Doesn't mean anything to me.
Right. And that's where this guide really stresses using action-oriented verbs. Things like proficient in or, excel at, demonstrated ability to, because you're actually showing, not just telling what you can do.
Yeah, and it has some great examples here. Like, I'm proficient in using tools like Python, Tableau, and SQL for data visualization and analysis.
Yeah.
That sounds so much more impactful than just saying, I'm good with data.
Exactly, because now you're being specific. You're using their language.
Yeah.
You're checking off those boxes on their, what they're looking for wish list.
Right. And especially in today's job market where it's so competitive, you really need to make it clear that you've got the goods.
You have those skills that they're looking for.
Okay, so we've talked about ourselves, we've talked about our skills. Now I got to dive into like our work experience. How do we get beyond just like listing our job titles and what we did at each place?
This is where I really like that the guide talks about the STAR method. Have you heard of this?
I have, but I don't know if our listeners have.
Okay, so STAR stands for situation, task, action, result.
Okay.
And it's really helpful because it gives you a framework for telling these stories that showcase your achievements.
Right.
So instead of saying, I was responsible for project management, you can actually give a specific example.
Yeah.
So in my previous role at, Company X, I managed a complex software implementation project, leading a team of 5 to successfully deliver the project under budget and ahead of schedule.
Oh, I like that. So it's not just a task anymore. It's a whole story.
Exactly. It's a story with a beginning, middle, and end. And it also highlights all those great things that you did.
Right.
Leadership, delivering results.
Yeah. And the guide really stresses the importance of using quantifiable results. Like, don't just say, I improved sales. Say, I increased sales by 20%.
Exactly. The numbers are powerful.
They make it real.
Yes.
Okay, so now we come to the part that everybody dreads, talking about weaknesses and challenges. This guide has a rather interesting take on this. What is it?
Well, it emphasizes honesty and growth. So instead of trying to hide your weaknesses or pretend they don't exist, it's about framing them as areas you're actively improving. So instead of saying, oh, I'm a bit disorganized sometimes, you can say something like, one area I'm working on is improving my time management skills. To address this, I've started using a project management tool to prioritize tasks and track deadlines.
Oh, so you're turning it into a positive.
Exactly. You're acknowledging the weakness, but you're showing self-awareness and a proactive approach.
Yeah, that you're willing to actually work on yourself.
Exactly.
And I think that's something employers really appreciate.
Absolutely. It shows you're committed to continuous learning and growth.
Okay, so we've laid all this groundwork. Now we're getting towards the end of the interview, and we have a chance to ask some questions. This isn't just about sitting there waiting for them to wrap up. This is our chance to interview them, right?
Exactly. It's a two-way street.
So the guide here, it suggests some questions like, can you tell me more about the team I'd be working with? Now that seems pretty basic. What makes a question like that effective?
Well, you're going beyond just the responsibilities. Right. You're trying to get a sense of the company culture. What are the team dynamics like?
Okay.
Do they value collaboration? What are the communication styles like? And that can tell you a lot.
So it's like reading between the lines of the job description. You're not just thinking about what you're going to be doing, you're thinking about who you're going to be doing it with.
Exactly. You're going to be spending 40 plus hours a week with these people.
Right, right. Okay, and another question that it suggests is, what does a typical day look like for someone in this role? Again, seems pretty basic. What's good about that one?
Well, it shows that you're thinking practically, right?
Okay.
About the day-to-day realities of the job.
Yeah, and I like that one because it helps you kind of picture yourself.
Yes.
Like, am I going to be in meetings all day? Am I going to be like heads down at my computer?
Exactly. And then you can gauge whether the work style aligns with your preferences. Another great question the guide suggests is, how does this role contribute to the company's overall goals?
Oh, I like that one.
So again, you're showing that you're not just there for a paycheck. You're thinking big picture. How can your work make a meaningful impact?
Right. Like, I'm here to help you achieve your mission.
Yes, exactly.
But is there a risk of sounding too ambitious or overstepping with a question like that?
Not if it's genuine. Most employers appreciate when candidates are genuinely interested in the company's mission and how their role fits in.
Okay, so it's about finding that balance between being ambitious but also realistic.
Right.
Okay, so now we're wrapping up. How do we make sure we leave a really good final impression?
So the guide talks about expressing gratitude, reiterating your interest, but making sure it's authentic.
Okay, so not just the typical, thank you for your time.
Exactly.
What's something better?
You can say something like, I appreciate the opportunity to learn more about this role and how my skills can contribute to your team. So you're being more specific.
Right, so you're summarizing what you've learned and also connecting it back to how you can help them.
Exactly. And then if you want to go a step further, you can even offer to provide additional information.
Okay.
Like, please let me know if you need any further details about my experience or qualifications.
Okay.
But frame it as a genuine offer, not a demand.
Right, right. You don't want to come across as desperate.
Exactly.
Okay, so confidence but not arrogance.
Exactly. Those closing moments are just as important as the opening.
Right. All right, we've covered a lot of ground here, from the minute you walk in the door to the minute you say goodbye. But this guide is more than just a list of phrases to memorize, right?
Absolutely. It's about understanding the underlying principles of communication and applying those to the job interview.
So it's not just about what you say, it's about how you say it.
Exactly. It's about finding that balance between using these proven techniques and letting your authentic self shine through.
Well, that brings up another point, which is authenticity, right? This guide keeps emphasizing the importance of being yourself. But how do you balance that with, you still want to come across as professional?
Yeah.
Where's the line?
Right.
How do you walk that tightrope?
Yeah. Think about it this way. You can use the phrases and the techniques to help structure your responses.
Yeah.
And to highlight those strengths. But the content should come from a genuine place.
Oh, okay. So it's you're using the guide as a foundation.
Yes.
But then you're building on top of it.
Exactly. Let's say they ask you to describe a time you faced a challenge at work.
Yeah.
You could use that STAR method that we talked about.
Right.
To structure your answer.
Yeah.
But the specific challenge you choose to talk about and how you overcame it, that should come from your real life experience.
Right, right. So it's you're using the tools.
Yes.
But then you're also letting your personality show through.
Exactly. Imagine you're at a dinner party and someone asks you about your work. You wouldn't just recite a list of phrases.
Right. You tell them a story.
Yeah, you tell a story, you talk about what you're passionate about.
Right.
It would be a natural conversation.
Yeah.
And that's the kind of energy you want to bring to an interview.
I see, I see. So it's like being yourself, but like the best version of yourself.
Exactly. Because interviewers, they're not just looking for, someone who can do the job. They're also looking for someone who's going to be a good fit for their team.
Right, a cultural fit.
Exactly. So they want to know if you'd be a good addition, not just like a robot who can do the tasks.
Right, okay. So really it's about being prepared, being professional, but also being genuine and enthusiastic.
Exactly. The guide is a great resource, for learning how to articulate those thoughts and experiences effectively.
Right.
But ultimately, it's your unique personality and passion that's going to make you stand out.
Okay. So I think to wrap up this deep dive into acing job interviews in English, the key takeaway is this. Master the techniques, use the phrases, but infuse them with your own personality and your own experience.
Well said. And don't be afraid to practice.
Oh, yeah.
The more you practice these phrases and you tailor them to your own stories, the more confident and authentic you're going to feel when that big day comes.
Right, right. Well, to all of our listeners out there who are preparing for the next big interview, we hope this has given you some valuable tools. Go out there, be yourself, and good luck. We'll see you next time for another deep dive.
Welcome back, everyone, for another deep dive. Today, we're going to be looking at something that I think we can all relate to. Those pesky words and phrases, the ones that we should probably just get rid of for good.
Yeah.
We all want to be better communicators, right?
Right.
And sometimes it's the little things that can really trip us up. So we found this really cool article. It's called 33 Words and Phrases to Remove from Your Vocabulary Immediately. And I'm super curious what jumped out at you when you saw this list.
It is interesting, isn't it, how we use these phrases without even realizing how they make other people see us. I think what really stood out to me was this section on filler words, all the ums and likes and knows that we all use.
Oh, yeah. We all know those ones. But what I thought was really interesting was that they pointed out a couple that I never even thought of as filler words before. Words like just and basically.
It's subtle, but they can really take away from what you're saying. Like instead of saying, I just wanted to ask a quick question, you can say, I have a question. It just sounds so much more confident, more direct. It's like you're trying to make your question seem less important even before you've asked it.
Oh, wow.
It's almost like you're apologizing for even asking.
Yeah, it's like we're apologizing for having a thought. And basically, what's wrong with that one? I use that all the time.
If you think about it, basically just adds extra fluff you don't need. It's like saying, I'm going to tell you something, but first I'm going to tell you that I'm going to tell you something.
Oh, you're so right. It's so indirect, and it's like you're not even sure about what you're going to say, which actually kind of brings us to another point. Those words and phrases that make you sound less confident, things like, I think, or hopefully, or maybe. What's going on there? Why do we use those?
Well, there's actually been a ton of research on this. It usually boils down to wanting to soften what we're saying or not wanting to come off too strong.
Yeah.
Like we're afraid of being wrong or being judged or maybe stepping on someone's toes.
Yeah, I could definitely see that, especially at work, right? Where you don't want to seem too aggressive or anything.
Yeah.
But I wonder if there's also a sort of societal pressure too, like especially for women. They're kind of expected to be more accommodating and less assertive.
There's definitely a societal pressure there. And I think it's something we should all be more aware of and try to push back against. But the good news is this article gives us some really good ways to rephrase these phrases that make us sound less confident. So like instead of saying, I think we should consider this, you can just say, we should consider this. It just sounds way more confident.
I am so guilty of that one. What about those phrases that sound like you're always looking for someone to agree with you? Like, does that make sense? I think we all do that sometimes, especially when we're explaining something complicated.
It makes sense to want to make sure people are following you, but if you do it too much, it can actually make you seem less credible. So instead of saying, does that make sense? Try saying something like, I hope this explanation is clear. It gets the same point across without sounding like you need someone to tell you you're doing a good job.
That's a really subtle difference, but I can see how it would make a big impact. Maybe we should all try to pay more attention to how we're using these phrases.
Yeah.
Have you noticed yourself using any of these confidence killers in your own conversations?
Oh, yeah, definitely. I think we all do it sometimes. It's all about being more aware of it and making a choice to use more powerful language. And that actually brings us to another category of phrases that can really make a difference in how people see you. Apologetic language.
You mean like the apology trap?
Yeah.
I've heard so much about this. It's amazing to me how often we say sorry, even when we haven't done anything wrong.
Right.
It's like we're apologizing for existing, for like taking up space or having needs.
Yeah, exactly. And you see it a lot with certain groups, especially women. There's this pressure to be more accommodating and less assertive. But if you apologize all the time, it can actually make what you're saying seem less important.
The article gives a really great example of this. Instead of saying, sorry to bother you, but can I ask a question? You could just say, may I ask a question? You don't have to apologize for wanting to learn something.
It's such a small change, but it can make you sound so much more confident. And it just shows that you don't need to apologize for simply existing or asking a question.
Right. Have you ever been on the receiving end of that? Like someone is constantly apologizing and it makes you feel like you have to reassure them that it's okay to just exist or ask a question.
Oh, for sure. It's like it creates this weird dynamic. And I think it can be contagious too. Like if one person is always apologizing, it makes everyone else feel like they need to apologize too, even if they haven't done anything wrong.
It really is. It's like we're all shrinking ourselves and our ideas, especially at work. Which actually kind of reminds me of another category of words we should probably avoid. Vague phrases.
Oh, yeah. The kind ofs and sort ofs and all that stuff.
Right. But isn't there a time and a place for being vague? Like if you're not really sure about something or you don't want to give a definite answer.
There's definitely a difference between being diplomatic and being vague. But when you're intentionally vague, it can lead to misunderstandings and confusion. Think about it. Have you ever gotten like an email or a text message that was so vague that you had no idea what the person was trying to say?
Oh, all the time. It's so frustrating.
Exactly.
And this article points out a few vague phrases that are just the worst. Like, it is what it is.
Ugh, I know.
I hate that one. It just sounds so defeatist.
Right? Like you're just giving up before you've even tried.
Exactly. So what's a better way to deal with a tough situation?
Instead of just accepting it, why not focus on what you can do? You could say something like, here's how we can approach this, or let's look at some other options. It puts the focus on action instead of just giving up.
Okay, yeah, that's much better. It's about taking charge instead of just letting things happen. And even simple phrases like kind of or sort of can make you sound unsure of yourself.
Imagine you're trying to sell a new idea at work and you say, I'm kind of excited about this project. It just doesn't have the same impact as saying, I'm excited about this project.
Right.
By getting rid of those little words, you're saying what you really mean more directly, more confidently.
Yeah, it's like those little words create this barrier between you and what you're trying to say. And speaking of barriers, this leads us to another group of words that can really get in the way of good communication. Jargon.
The jargon jungle.
I think we've all been lost in there at some point.
It can be so confusing, especially if you're new to a field or trying to learn something new.
It really is. And sometimes I wonder if people use jargon just to sound smart or to fit in, even if it makes what they're saying harder to understand.
Oh, definitely. Jargon can be a way of showing that you belong to a certain group. But the problem is, it often makes it harder for people to understand you.
The article calls out some of the classic examples of overused business jargon. Think outside the box is one that comes to mind immediately.
Yeah.
It's become so cliche that it's lost all meaning.
It's like saying, be creative, but I'm not going to tell you how.
So how do we escape the jargon trap? What are some better ways to say these things?
Instead of think outside the box, try being more specific about what you mean. You could say something like, let's challenge our assumptions, or let's come up with some unusual approaches.
I like those. And I think it's important to remember that jargon can be different depending on what industry you're in. What might be common jargon in one field could be totally foreign in another. What are some other jargon phrases that drive you crazy?
Circle back is one that always gets me.
Yes.
It's such a roundabout way of saying, we'll talk about this later.
Just see what you mean.
Right.
And synergy. That word gets thrown around so much that I'm not even sure what it means anymore.
Synergy has become such a buzzword. It's lost all meaning.
It's like it's supposed to be this magical solution to every problem. Have you ever been in a meeting where someone says synergy and everyone just nods along like they know what it means, but secretly you're all thinking, what the heck is synergy?
Oh yeah, all the time. It shows how important it is to just ask for clarification when you don't understand something. Don't be afraid to say, I don't get it. Can you explain that?
That's such great advice. I think sometimes we're afraid to ask because we don't want to look stupid.
Yeah.
But really, it just shows that you're paying attention and you want to learn.
Exactly. And that actually leads to another important part of communication that goes beyond just the words we use. We've been talking about what we say, but it's also important to think about how we say it. Our tone of voice, our body language, our listening skills, all of that plays a role.
Yeah, it's about the whole picture, right?
Right. Imagine you're giving a presentation at work and you've got this amazing message, but you're speaking in a monotone voice, not making eye contact and slouching over the podium. It doesn't matter how good your words are if your body language is saying something totally different.
It's like we're sabotaging ourselves without even knowing it. So how can we be more aware of our body language and make sure it's matching what we're saying?
Well, it all starts with just paying attention to yourself. Like, notice how you're standing, your facial expressions, how your voice sounds. Are you coming across as confident and interested? Or are you giving off vibes that you're not sure of yourself or you don't really care?
Oh, I know. I've been in situations where I thought I was projecting confidence, but looking back, I bet my body language was totally giving away how nervous I was.
Yeah, we've all been there. The important thing is to recognize when that's happening and try to make a conscious effort to change it. So if you're feeling nervous, try to focus on standing up straight, making eye contact, and speaking clearly and evenly.
Okay, that makes sense. And what about listening? Any tips for being a better listener? Not just hearing the words, but really understanding what the other person is trying to say.
Active listening is so important for good communication. It's about being present in the conversation, paying attention to what the person is saying, both with their words and their body language, and asking questions to make sure you understand their point of view.
It's like we need to put on our detective hats and look for clues beyond just the words themselves.
Exactly. And when you really listen to someone, it shows them that you respect what they have to say. It builds trust and strengthens relationships.
That's so true. I think it's easy to get caught up in our own heads and forget to really tune in to what other people are saying. So to bring it all back to our listeners today, how can they use this information to become better communicators?
I think the first step is just to be more aware of your own habits. Notice the words and phrases you use all the time. Are they helping you or hurting you?
Yeah, like holding up a mirror to how we communicate and seeing if anything needs to be adjusted.
Right. And once you've figured out what you want to change, it's all about practice. Make a conscious effort to replace those words and phrases with something better, something more powerful and more authentic.
And don't be afraid to try different things. See what works for you in different situations.
Exactly. Communicating is a skill. And like any skill, you have to practice to get better at it.
It's a journey, not a destination, right? We're all constantly learning and growing as communicators.
So true.
So to wrap up our deep dive into the words we should banish from our vocabulary, I think the biggest takeaway is that even small changes can have a big impact. By being more mindful of the words we use, our tone of voice, and our body language, we can all become more confident, clear, and persuasive communicators.
Absolutely. The words we choose matter. They shape how people see us, how we connect with each other, and how well we achieve our goals.
So here's a challenge for our listeners. Pick one word or phrase from our list today and try to stop using it this week. Pay attention to how it feels to use a different word. Do you feel more confident? Do people react to you differently?
I love that. It's amazing how much of a difference even a small change can make.
And one final thought. Today we focused on spoken language. But what about when we write? Our emails, texts, social media posts. It's something to think about. How can we bring that same awareness and intention to our writing?
That's such a good point. What we write can be just as important as what we say, maybe even more so. It's worth taking the time to really think about what we're writing and make sure it reflects who we are and what we want to say.
Well, that's all the time we have for today's deep dive. Thanks for joining us as we explored language and communication. Until next time, happy communicating. All right, let's level up those communication skills today. Ready to dive into cross-cultural conversations.
Always ready for a good conversation.
We're looking at this article called 12 Phrases You Should Never Say to Native Speakers. And I think everyone listening can relate to this. I know I've definitely made some of these mistakes.
Oh, absolutely. We all have. It's like a minefield out there sometimes. You never know what's going to accidentally cause offense.
And the thing is, it's not always about being intentionally rude, right?
Yeah.
It's about understanding the subtle ways our words can impact others, especially when we're navigating different cultures and languages.
It's about building those genuine connections, showing respect, even if we make a mistake.
Right. So let's unpack this article. What kind of conversational gems can we unearth today? And right off the bat, there's a pattern that jumps out at me. A lot of these problematic phrases start with you. Things like you speak too fast, or you don't look nationality, or even your English is so good.
It's so true. And it's interesting, isn't it? It's like we're putting the other person under a microscope, making judgments without even realizing it.
Yeah, instead of trying to understand their perspective, we just put them on the spot.
Exactly. So let's break down some examples. Take, you speak too fast. The article points out that this is often more about our own listening skills than their speaking pace.
It's about us taking responsibility.
Right. Instead of you speak too fast, we could simply say, could you repeat that more slowly, please?
It's a subtle shift, but it makes a world of difference, don't you think?
Huge difference. It changes the whole tone.
And what about something like, your language is so hard? Have you heard that one before?
All the time. And honestly, I've probably said it myself without thinking, but it can come across as so dismissive. Like their whole culture is something to be feared or avoided.
It's like if someone told you that your native language was difficult and strange. Wouldn't feel great, would it?
Not at all. Instead of judging their language, we could express some genuine interest. Maybe something like, I'm finding this one aspect challenging, but I'm really enjoying learning your language.
Yeah, I like that. You're acknowledging the difficulty, but showing that you appreciate their culture and language.
Exactly. And, you might even find that they're happy to share their own experiences. Maybe they've struggled with languages too. It can lead to a much deeper conversation.
Totally. All right, here's another one that I think a lot of us have probably heard or even said. You don't look nationality.
Oh, that's a tough one. It's like we're challenging their whole identity based on our own limited perceptions.
Reducing them to a stereotype instead of seeing them as an individual.
Exactly. The article suggests just avoiding comments on appearance altogether, especially when it comes to their nationality.
It's just not our place to make those judgments.
Right. And, we often make these comments without any bad intentions, but it's important to be aware of the impact.
Absolutely. So there's definitely a common thread here with these you statements. We need to move beyond those surface-level chit-chats and recognize that the words we choose, they can really make a difference.
They can build bridges or create barriers.
For sure. And I think this is already making me rethink some of my own conversational habits. There's so much more to unpack here. What other phrases should we avoid in cross-cultural conversations?
Well, let's move on to some phrases that dive into respecting individuality. Avoiding assumptions about people's lives. Like, have you ever been asked, do you know random person from their country?
Oh, all the time. It's like assuming everyone from a particular country is part of this giant social club. It always makes me cringe a little bit.
Right. It's like because they're from the same country, they must know each other.
It's just crazy.
And, it really highlights how we tend to put cultures in a box, forgetting about their diversity and just how vast they really are. It's like asking someone from a small town if they're best friends with the mayor, Just because they share a location doesn't mean they have this personal connection.
Yeah. Like, I'm from Canada. Does that mean I'm best friends with Justin Trudeau? Of course not.
Exactly. And it completely disregards their own individual experiences and relationships. So instead of that awkward question, what does the article suggest?
Well, they recommend something much more thoughtful. Like, I heard about this specific person or topic related to your country. What do you think about them?
Ooh, I like that.
It shows genuine interest, but it's still respectful of their individual perspective.
Yeah, you're not assuming they know everyone and everything. You're actually engaging them in a conversation.
Exactly. All right, here's another one that I think we've all probably heard or even said at some point. Your English is so good for a foreigner.
Ah, yes, the classic backhanded compliment.
It's like we're surprised they could speak English fluently.
Like we're setting this lower bar based on their background.
Yeah, and it reinforces this idea that English is the default, and everyone else is just trying to catch up. What's a better way to say it?
How about, you're very fluent?
I like it.
Yeah.
Simple and straight to the point.
It focuses on their actual skills instead of their perceived limitations.
All right, now this next phrase really made me stop and think. It's about how we view language. Have you ever heard someone say, why don't you speak your native language perfectly?
Wow. That's a tough one. Who gets to decide what perfect language even is?
Exactly. Like there's some objective standard.
Right. Languages are constantly evolving, and there are so many dialects and variations.
So it's like saying someone should be penalized for having a regional accent.
Yeah. It ignores the beauty and richness of just how different we all are.
So what does the article recommend in this situation?
Well, they recommend avoiding comments on their native language skills altogether unless they bring it up themselves.
Makes sense.
It's about respecting their own individual linguistic journey, not critiquing it.
Yeah. I'm really seeing a theme emerge here. We've talked about the you problem, respecting individuality, and now it's like we're moving towards cultural curiosity instead of cultural critique.
You're picking up on it, for sure. The article talks about approaching these conversations with a positive, inquisitive mindset.
Yeah. Instead of pointing out what someone's doing wrong based on our own cultural norms, we should try to understand why they do things differently.
What can we learn from their approach?
Exactly. So instead of judging or correcting, we should be asking questions.
Showing genuine interest. So, for example, instead of saying, "That's not how we do it," we could say, "That's interesting. Tell me more about how things work in your culture."
Okay, I like that. So what are some other examples of phrases that might fall into this category of cultural critique?
Well, one that often comes to mind is, "Can you teach me some bad words?"
Oh, yeah, I've heard that one a lot.
It kind of makes light of their language, doesn't it?
It does. It's like saying their language is only interesting if it can teach me how to be offensive.
And you know, there are so many other ways to express genuine interest in their language.
Like what?
How about, what are some phrases that locals often use?
Oh, that's so much better. It shows you're actually interested in learning about their culture.
And another common one that can be a bit intrusive is, "How much money do you make?"
Oh, yeah. That's a definite no-go.
It's way too personal, and it can be considered rude in so many cultures.
So instead of prying into their personal finances, what could we ask instead?
Maybe ask about the job market in their country, or what career opportunities are common in their field. Keep the conversation a little broader.
Right. You're showing interest, but respecting those boundaries.
Okay. Now here's one that a lot of people might not even realize is offensive. "Your accent is funny."
Ooh, I've been guilty of that one.
I think we've all chuckled at someone's accent before without realizing how hurtful it could be. It's easy to forget how personal language is.
Like you're making fun of who they are.
Exactly. So instead of that, what if we just expressed genuine curiosity? You could say, "I like your accent. Where is it from?"
You're turning a potential insult into a conversation starter.
You got it. It's all about that mindset shift. From critique to curiosity, recognizing that everyone's accent tells a story.
It's like each accent is a little piece of their history and their journey.
So we've covered a lot of ground here. We've talked about what not to say, but I'm curious, what can we do to actively bridge that gap in cross-cultural conversations?
Yeah, what are the positive steps?
Well, I'm glad you asked. Instead of saying things like, "You're so lucky to be a native speaker," which can downplay their own efforts and challenges, what if we show genuine interest by saying, "It must be interesting growing up with English as your first language"?
That's a much better way to acknowledge their experience.
And instead of saying, "That's not how we say it in my country," which can be dismissive, we can say, "That's an interesting way to say it. I'd love to learn more about how expressions work here."
I love that. You're turning a potential disagreement into a learning opportunity.
And finally, instead of saying, "You wouldn't understand," which completely shuts down the conversation, we can explain our own perspective by saying, "Let me explain. It's a bit different in my culture."
It acknowledges the difference but keeps the conversation flowing.
Exactly. All of these subtle shifts, they're about so much more than just words.
It's about listening, being open, and showing respect.
You got it. It's about recognizing that we all have something to learn from each other.
Okay, we're back, ready to wrap up this deep dive into cross-cultural conversations.
Lots of good stuff to review.
We've gone from those you statements all the way to that mindset shift from critique to curiosity. So much to consider.
It's like a whole new way of thinking about how we talk to people from other cultures.
Definitely. So let's boil it down to the essentials. What are the key things to keep in mind?
Well, I'd say first and foremost, be mindful of your language. We saw how even those little phrases can have a big impact, especially when we're talking about identity or culture.
It's almost like a whole new set of rules to learn. But the results are worth it, wouldn't you say?
Absolutely. And it goes beyond just the words themselves. Active listening is huge. It's not just waiting for your turn to speak. It's really trying to grasp their perspective.
Putting our assumptions aside for a minute.
Right. And don't be afraid to ask questions. Genuine curiosity goes a long way in bridging cultural gaps.
Instead of assuming we know everything, we get to learn directly from them.
Exactly. And look, we all make mistakes. Nobody's perfect, and that's okay.
I think sometimes we try so hard to be politically correct that we forget to just be ourselves.
Authenticity is key. People can tell when you're genuinely interested, even if you slip up here and there.
It's all about being open to learning from our mistakes, isn't it?
Absolutely. If there's one thing to take away from all of this, it's to be mindful, be curious, and be yourself. Embrace those conversations.
That's such great advice. We've given everyone a lot to think about.
Remember, our differences are what make the world so interesting.
Couldn't agree more. Thanks for joining us on this fascinating journey into cross-cultural communication. Until next time, keep exploring, keep learning, and keep those conversations going.
The world's full of incredible people with stories to share. Just be ready to listen. Hey there, fellow bookworms. Ready to level up your reading game? Today we're going deep, way past just finishing a book.
Yeah, think Reading Ninja. This is your secret decoder ring for unlocking those hidden layers of meaning in anything you read.
And our guide. This awesome piece, 7 tips to improve your reading at an advanced level. Practical advice, not just theory.
Totally. And it uses some really cool examples like switching between Great Gatsby and Marcus Aurelius's Meditations, to really stretch those reading muscles.
I love that, reading against the grain. It's so easy to stay in our comfort zones. What about you? What do you usually gravitate towards? What would be a surprising genre for you?
Oh, good question. I tend to lean towards nonfiction, history, biographies, that kind of thing. But to shake things up, maybe a graphic novel. Or poetry. I don't read a ton of poetry.
I get that. I love a good mystery, but I've been meaning to try more sci-fi, see what's out there. Which brings us to tip number 1, diversify your reading diet. The source is all about exploring different genres, styles, and topics.
Makes sense, right? Like food. You don't want to eat the same thing every day. You miss out on all those flavors and nutrients. Same with reading. Each genre has its own strengths, its own way of seeing the world.
Exactly. And they even suggest this cool activity. Read a news article on climate change, then read a poem on the same topic. See how different forms of writing can change your understanding.
That's such a good idea. The news article gives you the facts, right? But the poem might explore the emotional side, the impact on people. 2 totally different angles, but both important for understanding the whole picture.
Totally. Tip number 2 is all about active reading, something I'm always working on. It's about engaging with the text, not just skimming.
Yeah, that's where the magic happens. Active reading is like having a conversation with the author, asking questions, pushing back, making those connections in your own mind.
The source talks about the SQ3R method. Can you break that down for us? Why is it so helpful, especially with really complex texts?
I see SQ3R as a brain hack for better reading. It stands for survey, question, read, recite, review. Especially with dense stuff, it makes you slow down and engage on different levels. Like if you're reading the Federalist Papers, before diving in, you'd survey the structure, maybe skim headings or topic sentences.
So kind of setting the stage, getting an overview.
Exactly. Then you come up with questions based on what you see. What are the main points? What arguments is the author making? Now you're actively searching for answers as you read.
It's like a detective game.
Yes. Then the read phase, where you actively look for those answers.
Wait.
Next, you recite or summarize what you read in your own words. This helps solidify your understanding. And finally, review to make sure you remember the key points.
Intense, but it sounds super effective, especially for those brain bender books.
A mental workout, but a good one.
Okay, tip number 3 always gets me excited. Expanding our vocabulary. They suggest keeping a vocabulary journal, which sounds fun.
Like building your arsenal of words.
But what about those words that just completely stump you, like singularity in Stephen Hawking's A Brief History of Time? I remember just staring at that one, completely lost.
I know that feeling. You got to become a word detective. Context is everything. You can often figure out the meaning using root words, prefixes, suffixes, break it down into smaller parts.
Like solving a puzzle. And once you crack the code, that word unlocks a whole new level of understanding. I had that with epistemology in a philosophy book. I finally broke it down. Episteme meaning knowledge, and logos meaning study. Boom, the study of knowledge.
It's the best feeling. And those aha moments build on each other. Every new word opens up more understanding. You can tackle even more complex stuff.
Brain leveling up. Tip number 4 is where it gets interesting. Author's craft. Understanding the why behind an author's choices.
It's like peeking behind the curtain, seeing the magician's secrets.
Totally. They use 1984 as an example how Orwell creates that feeling of oppression through his writing. What are some clues we can look for to get an author's purpose?
Oh, so many. Tone, imagery, sentence structure, rhetorical devices, they all add up. Like, think about it. A short, choppy sentence creates urgency, tension, right? But a long flowing one might feel more thoughtful.
Like composing music with words, using different instruments to create different effects.
Great analogy. And you, as the reader, start to pick up on those little cues. You see how everything plays a role: word choice, pacing, even punctuation.
Like learning a secret language. They suggest analyzing a paragraph from Virginia Woolf's To the Lighthouse to really examine the sentence structure. I challenge you, try that with anything you're reading. Pick a passage and dissect it. It's amazing what you find.
I agree. Ask yourself, what choices are they making and why? You'll see patterns, appreciate the craft even more.
Okay, tip number 5 gets into summarizing and critical thinking. Essential skills for any advanced reader. I'll admit, sometimes I just want to get lost in the story, but slowing down to analyze is crucial too.
It's like the difference between watching a movie passively versus really engaging with it. When you summarize, you got to boil things down to the essence, really understand the main points. Critical thinking is about questioning assumptions, looking at different perspectives, and evaluating the evidence.
They talk about summarizing an article on AI, which is constantly changing. Imagine trying to sum up all those complex ideas.
It's a challenge.
Yeah.
But so valuable. Critical thinking is even more important now. We're bombarded with information from everywhere. You got to be able to tell fact from opinion, bias from objectivity.
It's about being a smart consumer of information, not just believing everything you read.
Exactly. And a great way to practice those skills is joining a book club or discussion group.
Have you ever read Thoreau's Civil Disobedience? Talk about sparking debate. Those ideas about individual conscience versus the state are still so relevant. Imagine discussing that in a book club. Things could get heated in a good way.
I'd love to be a fly on the wall for that one. A book club is like having your own team of experts to bounce ideas off of. You hear different interpretations, challenge your own assumptions. You might discover things you missed on your own.
It's like having multiple lenses to view the same material. Plus, you might find new authors or genres you wouldn't have tried otherwise. And it's just fun to geek out with other book lovers.
Totally. It's a built-in support system for your reading journey.
Speaking of support, ready for tip number 6. This one might surprise you. Reading aloud.
I know, right? It sounds a bit counterintuitive, but trust me, there are benefits, especially for complex texts.
They even suggest trying it with Shakespearean sonnets to appreciate the rhythm and flow, like adding another dimension to the words.
It is. It forces you to slow down, enunciate clearly, savor the language. Especially helpful with poetry, but even with prose it makes a difference. Imagine tackling a dense philosophical argument out loud. It becomes so much clearer.
Okay, I'm starting to get it. It's like using more of your senses to engage with the material.
Exactly. And remember, we learned language through sound first. Reading aloud taps into that. Plus, think about when we were kids reading aloud together. We learned so much that way.
I loved those read-alouds in school. And the source even says, record yourself reading aloud and listen back.
Brilliant.
Yeah.
It might feel awkward, but it's a fantastic way to see where you stumble, work on pronunciation, improve fluency, like your own personal coach.
I'm adding that to my toolkit. Okay, our final tip. Goal setting. I'm all about goals, but sometimes I'm not sure where to start, especially with something as broad as reading.
I get that. The source uses War and Peace as an example, which is a big one. But they have a great point. Break down big goals into smaller chunks.
So instead of I'm going to read War and Peace, it's I'm going to read 50 pages a week.
Exactly. It feels much less scary.
Yeah.
And you get that sense of accomplishment as you hit those smaller milestones.
And there are great tools to help you track your progress. I love Goodreads. It's so motivating to see what you've read, find new books, share your thoughts.
It's a great community for book lovers.
Yeah.
And speaking of community, they mentioned book clubs again. There's nothing like connecting with other readers and really diving deep together.
It's like a cheering squad for your reading journey. So we've covered a lot. Diversifying our reading, active reading, vocabulary, author's craft, summarizing, reading aloud, and goal setting. It's been quite the exploration of becoming a more advanced reader.
It has. And I hope our listeners feel inspired to take their reading to that next level.
Me too. You know, as we wrap up this part, it makes me think about the power of reading. It's not just about knowledge. It's about understanding the world and ourselves better.
That's beautifully put. It's about empathy, critical thinking, opening ourselves up to new perspectives and possibilities.
Exactly. And it's a journey that never really ends. There's always something new to discover, a new connection to make.
And with the right tools and techniques, we can keep growing as readers our whole lives.
I love that. So, as we wrap up this segment of our deep dive, I want to leave you with a thought. What's one book or article you've always wanted to read, but felt intimidated by?
What's that one that's been sitting on your shelf, whispering promises of adventure?
Maybe it's a classic, a dense philosophical work, or something scientific that's always intrigued you. Now is the time to embrace the challenge.
Use the tips we've discussed and approach it with confidence, curiosity, a sense of adventure. You might be surprised.
Now, before we move on to part 2, we want to hear from you. What's one aha moment you've had while reading? Share your stories, your insights, your favorite reading techniques. We'll be back soon with more on how to level up your reading game.
That reminds me of when I was wrestling with this really dense philosophy book, and I was just stuck. I tried recording myself reading it aloud just to see, and honestly,
what happened?
It was like someone else was reading. I picked up on all these things I totally missed before.
It's amazing how just changing how you interact with the text can do that. Unlock it. Speaking of unlocking, tip number 6 is all about reading aloud.
Yeah, I know, right? Sounds a bit old school.
Yeah, like elementary school. But the source makes a good case for it, especially for becoming more advanced readers.
Certainly.
They even suggest reading Shakespeare out loud, like those sonnets.
Oh, yeah.
To get the rhythm and flow. What's the idea there?
When you read silently, don't you think you kind of skim? Your mind races ahead?
Oh, for sure.
But reading aloud, you got to slow down. Enunciate every word. Really savor the language. Like it adds this whole other dimension.
Almost like performing it, bringing it to life. So you pick up on those subtle things you might miss otherwise.
Exactly. And it's not just poetry. Think about a tough philosophical argument or even a legal document. Reading it aloud can make it so much clearer.
Okay, I see what you're saying. It's like using more of your senses to really engage with it, which helps you remember it better too.
Right. And we learn language through hearing first, don't we? Yeah. So reading aloud kind of taps into that. Plus, it's like when we were kids reading aloud together.
Yeah.
Remember how much we absorbed?
I do. Those were great. And the source even says to try recording yourself reading aloud and listening back.
I know, it sounds a little weird.
Yeah, but it could be really helpful.
Absolutely. You can hear where you trip up, work on pronunciation, get more fluent overall. It's like having your own personal coach.
I gotta try that. Okay, last tip from the source. Goal setting. I'm a huge believer in goals, but I'm not always sure where to begin with reading. It can feel so overwhelming.
Yeah, I understand that. They use War and Peace as an example, which, yeah.
That's a big one, intimidating. But their point is, break it down.
Exactly. So instead of I'm going to read War and Peace, maybe it's I'm going to read 50 pages a week.
Right. Way less daunting.
And you get that feeling of accomplishment as you hit those smaller goals.
Which keeps you motivated. And there are great tools to help, like Goodreads. I love that. Seeing your progress, finding new books, sharing your thoughts.
It's such a great community for book lovers. And that brings us back to community in general, right?
Yeah. Book clubs, online groups, even just friends you swap books with. It makes a difference.
Totally. Having other readers around you, it's like a support system.
A cheering squad for your reading.
I like that. And with all this talk about tips and goals, it's important to remember, reading should be fun.
Oh, absolutely.
We can get so caught up in improving that we forget to enjoy a good book.
So true. It shouldn't feel like work.
It's like anything else. You got to find that sweet spot between challenge and pleasure.
All right. We've done a deep dive on these 7 tips, but before we go, I want to ask you, the listener, what really stuck with you?
Was there one that was like, aha, that's it?
Or maybe a challenge you're ready to tackle now?
Want to hear your thoughts. Reading is a journey, and the best ones are shared.
So let's keep talking. What are your favorite ways to level up your reading game? We'll be back with more soon. So we've been talking about all these great tips for becoming better readers. But sometimes, even with the best techniques, you just hit a wall.
For sure.
You get those books, those articles, even just certain paragraphs, and you're like, ugh, this is a struggle.
Yeah.
And it can be so discouraging. You're excited to read something new, and then it just doesn't click. What do you do when you run into that, when you're just not connecting?
Well, first you got to remember, it's okay. It's normal to struggle with certain things.
Right.
It doesn't mean you're a bad reader or that the writing is bad. Sometimes it's just not a good fit for you.
I like that, giving yourself permission to not love everything.
Exactly. Once you accept that, you can look at those tougher texts with more, maybe a little kindness towards yourself and curiosity.
So instead of getting frustrated, you ask, okay, what's making this hard for me?
Yeah. Is it the vocabulary, the sentences, the topic itself?
Right.
And once you figure out what it is, you can start to find ways to deal with it. Vocabulary. Maybe you grab the dictionary or look for clues in the surrounding words. tricky sentences. Break them down into smaller parts. Or read them aloud. See if the rhythm helps.
You're like a reading detective, using your tools to crack the case.
I love that. And sometimes the best thing is to just walk away for a bit.
Oh, yeah.
Go for a walk, listen to music, do something completely different. Come back with fresh eyes.
That distance can really help. It's like with a painting, you step back to see the whole picture.
Exactly. And honestly, remember that reading should be fun. If you're always fighting with it, feeling frustrated, maybe it's time to try something else.
I agree. A different genre, a new author, or even an old favorite that always makes you happy. There's so many amazing books out there. There's something for everyone.
For sure. The important thing is to find what you're curious about, what sparks your imagination.
You know, as we wrap up this whole deep dive into reading, it keeps coming back to this. It's so personal.
It really is.
We can learn techniques, we can get better at it, but at the end of the day, it's that connection you make with what you're reading.
It's like connecting with another mind, even if they lived centuries ago, exploring new worlds, understanding ourselves and the universe better.
A journey of discovery. And like all good journeys, the best thing is to go with curiosity, a sense of wonder, and be open to getting a little lost along the way.
Keep exploring, keep asking questions, and never lose that sense of wonder. That's the magic of reading.
That's all for this episode of The Deep Dive. We hope you found some inspiration to level up your reading game. Until next time, happy reading.
Hey everyone, welcome back. Ready to unlock some of the secrets of fluent English.
I think we all know that feeling, like you understand the individual words, but something's missing.
It's like everyone else is in on a joke and you're left out.
Exactly. And that's where idioms come in, right? They're like these little cultural puzzles that can really trip you up.
And today, we're going deep into the world of idioms, tackling a list of 21 that are key to taking your English from intermediate to advanced, really sounding more natural and fluent.
And you know, idioms aren't just about sounding good, are they? They often give us a glimpse into the history and the culture of a language.
Oh, absolutely. So we'll be unpacking not just what these idioms mean, but also where they come from and how to use them effectively in different situations.
And maybe even a few funny stories along the way. So are you ready to dive in?
Absolutely. Let's get started with our first idiom, a blessing in disguise. Have you ever experienced something that seemed bad at first, but turned out to be a good thing in the end?
I think we all have. It's like that feeling when you miss a flight and then you find out it got delayed for hours anyway.
Exactly. Or maybe you didn't get the job you really wanted, but ended up with an even better opportunity. It's those moments when we realize that things happen for a reason.
And that sometimes what we perceive as setbacks can actually lead us to something much better.
It's like the universe has a plan, right?
Right. And speaking of getting to the point, our next idiom is beat around the bush. I think we're all guilty of this sometimes, especially when we have to have a difficult conversation.
Oh, for sure. Instead of just coming out and saying what we mean, we kind of dance around the topic, hoping the other person will figure it out.
Yeah, like when you want to ask for a raise, but you start talking about how much you love your job and how dedicated you are.
Instead of just saying, hey, I think I deserve a raise.
Right. It's that awkward feeling of wanting to address something, but not wanting to be too direct.
So how do we break out of that beating around the bush habit? Any tips for being more direct?
Well, I think being mindful of it is the first step, recognizing when we're doing it, and then just practicing being more straightforward, even if it feels a little uncomfortable at first.
Now picture this. You're at a party, you don't know many people, and you want to start a conversation. That's where you need to break the ice.
Oh yes, break the ice. That's a classic one. It's all about easing that initial awkwardness, isn't it?
Exactly. It's about creating that first connection, like literally breaking through a sheet of ice to open up a pathway for conversation.
And sometimes it can be as simple as a compliment, you know, like, I love your shoes.
Or even a simple question like, have you tried any of the appetizers yet? Anything to get the conversation flowing.
Exactly. And, you know, sometimes humor can be a great icebreaker, too.
Oh, yeah. A well-timed joke can definitely lighten the mood.
It's all about finding that common ground, that shared moment of laughter.
Now, let's talk about something that can cost an arm and a leg. It's when something is just ridiculously expensive.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. Like, have you seen the prices of concert tickets these days?
Oh my gosh, they're insane.
It's like they want you to give up a limb just to see your favorite band.
It's that feeling of, it's really worth that much.
Right? But sometimes you just gotta splurge, you know?
But let's talk about those satisfying moments when you get something exactly right, like when you hit the nail on the head.
Ah, Yes, it's that feeling of nailing it, isn't it? Like when you perfectly describe a situation or you figure out the root cause of a problem.
With like that aha moment. And it likely comes from, actually hammering a nail and getting it perfectly straight.
Right. And it's such a satisfying feeling, whether you're talking about solving a problem or just understanding a concept.
So have you ever hit the nail on the head with something recently?
Let me think. Oh, actually, just the other day, a friend was describing a situation they were going through, and I was able to offer some advice that really resonated with them. They said, I hit the nail on the head.
It's like you were able to see the situation clearly and offer the perfect solution.
Exactly. It felt good to be able to help.
Now, switching gears a bit, have you ever been feeling under the weather?
I think we all know that feeling. It's that kind of blah feeling when you're just not quite yourself.
Right, like maybe you have a slight cold or just feel a bit run down.
And no one wants to hear all your symptoms.
Exactly. Under the weather is a much gentler way to say, I'm not feeling great.
And I've always wondered where that one came from.
Me too. I've heard it might be related to sailors feeling seasick when the weather was rough.
Oh, that makes sense. Like the weather is literally affecting how you feel.
Now be careful not to let the cat out of the bag.
Oops. That's when you accidentally reveal a secret, isn't it?
Exactly. Like if you're planning a surprise party and someone spills the beans to the guest of honor.
I've always loved the imagery with that one. Like imagine a cat jumping out of a bag and everyone's surprised.
It's such a vivid way to describe that moment of, oh no, I shouldn't have said that.
And it happens to the best of us.
So how do we avoid those cat out of the bag situations? Any tips for keeping secrets safe?
I think sometimes it's better not to know the secret at all if you're someone who tends to blurt things out.
That's a great point. If you don't know, you can't accidentally reveal it.
Exactly. Or, just be extra careful about who you talk to and what you say.
But sometimes you just have to accept that the ball is in your court.
Ah, yes. That's when it's someone else's turn to make a decision or take action.
It's like passing the baton in a relay race.
Exactly. You've done your part, and now it's up to them to decide what to do next.
It's often used in negotiations or discussions, right?
Yes, like when you've presented your offer and you're waiting for the other person to respond.
And sometimes, to get things done, you just have to burn the midnight oil.
Yeah, that's a good one. It means staying up late, working, usually on a project or deadline.
Back in the day, it literally meant working by the light of an oil lamp.
Right. But nowadays, it's more about that feeling of burning the candle at both ends.
But sometimes, you have to face those challenges head on. Like when you have to bite the bullet.
It means doing something difficult or unpleasant, even though you don't want to.
Like going to the dentist, right?
Yeah, exactly. Or having that tough conversation you've been putting off.
But on a brighter note, some things happen very rarely, like once in a blue moon.
Oh, I love this one. It's so poetic. And it actually refers to a real astronomical event,
Really?
Yeah, when a second full moon occurs within the same calendar month. It doesn't actually look blue, though.
Oh, that's interesting. So it's something that happens very infrequently.
Exactly. Like winning the lottery or seeing a unicorn.
Now, let's talk about maximizing efficiency. It's like when you kill two birds with one stone.
Yes. It's about accomplishing two things with one action, isn't it?
Like if you need to go to the post office and the grocery store, and they're right next to each other, you can do both errands in one trip.
Exactly. It's all about being smart with your time and effort.
And sometimes things are surprisingly easy, like a piece of cake.
Oh, yeah. That's a great way to say something was simple and effortless.
It makes it sound almost enjoyable, right? Like it was no trouble at all.
Exactly. Like, that exam was a piece of cake.
But be careful not to put all your eggs in one basket.
Oh, yes. That's a good reminder. It's about diversification, isn't it? Not putting all your hopes or resources into one thing.
Exactly. It's like spreading your risk so if one thing doesn't work out, you have others to fall back on.
Right. Like, don't invest all your money in one stock. Or don't rely on just one person for your happiness.
Speaking of revealing secrets, sometimes you accidentally spill the beans.
Oops. That's like letting the cat out of the bag, right? But maybe a bit more unintentional.
Right. It's like you just blurt something out without thinking.
And it can be so embarrassing.
It is. Especially if it's a secret that you're supposed to keep.
Oh, for sure. But sometimes it's just a funny slip-up.
But it's always important to consider different perspectives and not take everything at face value. That's when you take something with a grain of salt.
Yeah, it means being a little skeptical, doesn't it? Not believing everything you hear.
Especially in today's world, with so much information flying around, it's crucial to be discerning, to question things.
Right. Not everything is as it seems.
So how do you decide what to take with a grain of salt? What are some red flags?
That's a good question. I think it's about looking at the source of the information, Is it a reliable source?
And sometimes, no matter how hard you try, you just have to throw in the towel.
Yeah, that's when you admit defeat, isn't it? You realize it's time to give up.
It's like knowing when to walk away from a fight.
Right. It's not always easy, but sometimes it's the best thing to do.
And have you ever felt like you were barking up the wrong tree?
Oh, definitely. It's when you're pursuing a path or a solution that's just not going to work.
You're putting in all this effort, but you're headed in the wrong direction.
It's like you're lost in the woods and you keep going deeper and deeper, but you're not getting any closer to your destination.
Exactly. And sometimes it takes a while to realize that you're on the wrong track.
It does. But it's important to be able to recognize those dead ends and be willing to change course.
So how do you know when it's time to stop barking up the wrong tree and try a different approach?
I think it's about paying attention to the signs. If you're not making any progress, if you keep hitting roadblocks, it might be time to step back and reassess your strategy.
That's great advice. Now, wouldn't it be amazing to always have the best of both worlds?
That is the dream, isn't it? It's like having your cake and eating it too.
Exactly. It's about finding that perfect balance, that ideal situation where you get the advantages of two seemingly opposite things.
Like imagine working from home, but still having that sense of community and collaboration that comes from being in an office.
But sometimes you just have to throw caution to the wind and go for it.
Oh, absolutely. It's about embracing risk and spontaneity, letting go of your fears and just going for it.
It's like that feeling of freedom and excitement when you decide to do something unexpected.
Exactly. Like quitting your job to travel the world.
And finally, going above and beyond, giving it your all, that's going the extra mile.
It's about exceeding expectations, isn't it? Putting in that extra effort to make something truly special.
Like staying late to help a colleague finish a project or going out of your way to make a customer happy. It's those little things that make a big difference.
And, going the extra mile doesn't always have to be about work. It can be about anything, really.
Oh, absolutely. It's about that attitude of always striving to do your best.
Exactly. And it's something that people really appreciate, whether it's in your personal or professional life.
So we've covered a lot of ground here, explored 21 essential idioms. What stands out to you so far? Any favorites?
So many great ones. I think bite the bullet is one that really resonates with me. It's a reminder that sometimes we just have to face those challenges head on, even if it's uncomfortable. What about you?
I think the best of both worlds really appeals to me. That idea of finding balance and enjoying the benefits of different perspectives.
Yeah, that's a good one. It's a reminder that we don't always have to choose one thing over another. Sometimes we can find a way to have it all.
Exactly. And that's a great note to end on for this part of our deep dive. We've only just begun to scratch the surface of these idioms, but we'll be back soon to explore even more of their nuances and applications.
Looking forward to it. I think for me, bite the bullet is one of the ones that really stands out.
Yeah, I get that. Knowing the history behind it too, like, wow.
It just highlights that kind of courage,
Right.
that we need to face things we don't really want to.
Like steeling yourself, getting ready.
Totally.
And have you ever had to bite the bullet recently?
Oh, all the time. I think we all do, right?
Yeah.
But one that comes to mind is I remember having to give a presentation to, a huge audience.
Ooh, that's tough.
Yeah. And I was so terrified, but I knew I just had to bite the bullet, get up there and do it.
And I bet once you did, it wasn't so bad.
It's always like that, right? The anticipation is worse.
The build-up. And it makes you stronger too, each time.
Oh, absolutely. And that actually makes me think of barking up the wrong tree, because sometimes you think you're, doing the right thing.
Putting in all this effort.
And then you realize, this is a dead end.
You're headed in the wrong direction.
Completely. And that happens a lot, I think, especially today with so much information.
Oh, yeah. It's overwhelming.
It really is. And so it's easy to get sidetracked.
Yeah, to go down rabbit holes.
But I think there's a lot of value in recognizing that you're doing that.
Totally.
And then you can say, okay, well, what other options do I have? How else can I approach this?
It's about being flexible, being adaptable.
Yeah, and I think that leads us nicely to the best of both worlds, because...
Ooh, the ideal.
Right. Because sometimes you do have to choose one or the other, but sometimes you can find a way to get the benefits of both.
To kind of merge them.
Yeah, exactly. It's like, having that flexibility of working remotely, but also still having that in-person connection.
Yeah, that sense of community.
Yeah.
And sometimes you just got to throw caution to the wind.
And just go for it.
Right.
I love those moments.
Those are the best, those spontaneous decisions.
Absolutely. Even if it's a little bit scary, a little bit risky.
Like quitting your job to travel the world.
Oh, yeah. That's a big one.
But so freeing. Right.
It is. And I think those are the moments that really can shape our lives.
Yeah, those leaps of faith.
For sure.
And then it's about putting in that extra effort, going the extra mile.
Yes, it's like going above and beyond.
Right, really making a difference.
Yeah, exceeding those expectations.
So have you gone the extra mile for anything lately?
You know, I've been really focused on a project at work.
Okay.
I've been, putting in the extra hours and really trying to make sure it's the best it can be.
To make it shine.
Yeah.
So we've talked about how to use these idioms, but I think it's also interesting to think about what they reveal about the culture of English speakers.
What do you think?
Well, I think one theme that keeps coming up is hard work, perseverance.
Yeah, I see that. Like, bite the bullet, burn the midnight oil. It's like you push through those challenges.
You don't give up.
Exactly.
You get it done.
And then you also have throw caution to the wind, which is more about that kind of risk-taking spirit.
Yeah, that adventurous side.
So it's interesting. It's like there's that balance.
Of both.
Yeah, you work hard, but you're not afraid to try new things and take a chance.
And the best of both worlds speaks to that, that balance, compromise.
Yeah, like finding the middle ground.
Yeah.
Trying to see things from different perspectives.
And take it with a grain of salt, which is kind of like, don't believe everything you hear, right?
Question things.
Be a critical thinker.
Yeah.
So as we wrap up this part of our deep dive, what would you say are some key takeaways for our listeners?
I think don't be afraid to start using these idioms. The more you use them, the more natural they'll feel.
Practice makes perfect.
Absolutely.
And I think it's important to remember that idioms are more than just words. They're really a window into the culture.
Yeah, they tell us something about the values and the beliefs of the people who use them.
So pay attention to how people use them in different contexts, and you'll start to pick up on those nuances.
Yeah, you'll gain a deeper understanding, not just of the language, but of the culture as well.
Yeah, it really is fascinating to see how much we can learn just from these little phrases. It's like they're little time capsules of culture. So let's talk a little bit more about that connection between language and culture.
Yeah.
Do you think the idioms we use, do they actually influence how we think?
Ooh, that's a really interesting question.
Right. It makes you wonder, like, if these phrases that we use all the time,
Yeah.
if they kind of subtly shape our perceptions of the world,
Yeah.
like spill the beans, for example, does that say something about a culture that values discretion?
Yeah.
Or does using that idiom actually reinforce that value, make us more aware of keeping secrets?
Yeah, it's like, which came first?
The chicken or the egg?
Exactly. Does language reflect culture, or does it shape it?
Or maybe a bit of both.
I think it's probably a bit of both.
Yeah.
It's this kind of back and forth between the words we use and how we see the world.
And that makes me think about throw caution to the wind, too.
Yeah.
Does that reflect a culture that's maybe more prone to taking risks?
Yeah, or does it encourage us to be more adventurous,
Right, to embrace those leaps of faith and the best of both worlds.
Yeah.
Does that suggest that we like balance, compromise, or does it actually encourage us to seek out those win-win situations?
Yeah. It's really fascinating to think about.
It's like language is this tool that can both reflect and influence our values and beliefs.
Exactly. And I think that's what makes learning idioms, so much fun. Yeah. It's not just about the words themselves. It's about what they tell us about the culture and about ourselves, really.
So as we wrap up our deep dive into these 21 essential idioms, what would you say is your biggest takeaway for our listeners?
Don't just memorize them, experience them.
Ooh, I love that.
Listen for them when you hear people talking, when you watch movies, when you listen to music.
See how they're using them in real life.
Exactly. And try using them yourself. The more you use them,
the more natural they'll feel.
Absolutely.
And it's like anything else you're learning. The more you immerse yourself, the more it becomes part of you. And the more you explore language, the more you appreciate its beauty and its power.
It's true. Language it's a gift.
It is.
It's a way to connect with other people and to understand different cultures.
To build bridges.
Exactly. And idioms are like like little gems.
They are.
That add so much richness to our communication.
So keep exploring, keep discovering, and keep diving deep into the world of words.
Yes.
Who knows what treasures you'll uncover.
Happy exploring! And until next time, may your conversations be filled with colorful idioms and insightful discoveries. You ever notice how some people just have like the perfect word for everything? It's like they've got this secret vocabulary that makes them sound super smart.
Yeah.
Well, good news, because today we're unlocking that secret vocabulary.
Sounds good.
We're doing a deep dive into 33 advanced English words, phrases, and idioms for everyday conversations.
Oh, nice.
We're going to cover 11 words, 11 phrases, and 11 idioms.
Wow, that's a lot.
It is,
Yeah.
but it's going to be fun, and you'll be able to impress all your friends.
I like it.
Okay, so let's start with words.
Okay.
We're not going to bore you with basic definitions that you can find anywhere.
Right.
We're going to focus on the good stuff, you know.
That's the juicy stuff.
Exactly, the juicy stuff. So, like, take the word meticulous.
Okay.
Sure, it means being careful and precise,
Right.
but there's more to it than that.
Oh, yeah.
Like, when you think about a meticulously crafted argument or a meticulously planned event, it just gives us this impression of competence, you know?
Like you really know what you're doing.
Exactly, like you've mastered it.
Yeah, I see
It
that.
can also be a little bit tricky.
How so?
Well, because sometimes that meticulousness can turn into perfectionism.
Yeah, too much of a good thing.
Right, and then it's not so good anymore.
There's that saying, perfect is the enemy of good.
That's so true.
Yeah.
Okay, let's move on to a word I absolutely love. Serendipity.
Ooh, that's a good one.
It's more than just those happy little accidents, you know?
Yeah, it's about being open to those moments, recognizing them when they happen.
It's like having that curious mindset, like being willing to go with the flow.
Definitely.
Have you ever like changed your plans last minute and it led to something amazing?
Oh, all the time. Actually,
Yeah.
some of my best discoveries happened because I was open to detours in my research.
It's like those detours, those unexpected turns, they reveal something new.
Yeah, about ourselves, about the world around us.
Exactly. Okay, last word for this round. Ephemeral.
Ephemeral.
It's all about things being fleeting, you know, temporary.
Yeah, especially relevant these days.
Right, like think about the internet and social media.
It's all so fast-paced.
One day something's trending, the next day it's gone.
Makes you wonder if anything really lasts anymore.
It does, doesn't it? It's like we're always chasing the next big thing.
And maybe missing out on what's right in front of us.
Maybe. So
Mm-hmm.
out of these 3 words, which one speaks to you the most?
That's a tough one.
It is. They're all so good.
I think for me it's serendipity.
Oh, good choice. I love that one too.
Yeah, it's just such a beautiful concept. You know, being open to the unexpected.
Totally. And who knows what amazing things we might discover along the way.
Exactly.
All right, so we've tackled some awesome words.
We have.
Now get ready because we're about to level up.
Oh.
We're moving on to phrases.
Okay, bring it on.
All right, so we crushed those words.
We did some good word crushing.
We did.
Yeah.
Now get ready because we're moving on to phrases.
Oh, yeah. Phrases, those are fun.
They are. And they're not just a bunch of words strung together, you know?
Right. They've got history, imagery, culture baked right in.
Exactly like they tell a story.
A story in just a few words.
Ooh.
I love it.
Me too. Okay, let's start with a classic. Bite the bullet.
Ooh, that's a good one.
It means facing something unpleasant head on, right?
Yeah, but the origin story is what really makes it fascinating.
Oh, totally. You know where it comes from.
From back in the day before anesthesia, when surgeons would have patients literally bite down on a bullet during surgery.
Can you imagine the pain?
I know, it's wild, right? Talk about facing something difficult.
It gives the phrase a whole new meaning.
It does, doesn't it?
Right,
Like you
yeah.
can really feel the weight of it.
And you can use it for so many things.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
Like giving a presentation, cleaning out your closet, anything you're dreading.
Exactly. It's like, just got to do it, get it over with.
Bite the bullet and move on. Okay, let's switch gears completely.
Okay, are we coming?
Let's talk about accuracy, precision, hitting the mark.
Hitting the mark. I like it.
And the phrase that perfectly captures that, hit the nail on the head.
Yes, when someone just gets it completely.
Right. They say exactly what you were thinking but couldn't quite articulate.
It's like they read your mind.
Totally.
Yeah.
But of course, the opposite can happen too.
Oh, yeah, when someone misses the mark completely.
It's like their advice or whatever just falls flat.
And it can even make things worse sometimes.
It's a reminder that good communication is about more than just words.
It's about understanding the other person's perspective, finding that connection.
Well said. Okay, now for a phrase that's super relevant in our world today. Jumping on the bandwagon.
Oh, the bandwagon. Everyone's doing it.
Right. And it's kind of a double-edged sword.
How so?
Well, on one hand, we all want to belong to be part of something bigger.
Yeah, that sense of community is powerful.
It is. But then there's that other side, the conformity, you know?
Like, when does following the crowd become a problem?
Exactly. When you stop thinking for yourself, just blindly follow along.
So it's about being aware of your motivations, right?
Totally. Are you doing because you genuinely believe in it?
Or just because everyone else is?
Right. It's a good thing to think about.
Okay, last phrase for this round. And it involves a little bit of secrecy.
Ooh, I like secrets. Me too. The phrase is, let the cat out of the bag.
Ah, yes, spilling the beans.
Exactly. But knowing when to spill them and when to keep quiet, that's the key.
It is. It's about discretion, knowing when to speak up and when to hold back.
And sometimes letting the cat out of the bag, even if it's uncomfortable, can be the right thing to do.
Absolutely. Like if it's a matter of ethics or safety.
Right.
It's all about finding that balance.
Finding that balance between honesty and discretion.
Exactly. And that's not always easy.
Nope. It's a delicate dance.
All right. Get ready for the grand finale. We're talking idioms.
Idioms. Oh, yeah. Those are fun.
They're like little linguistic puzzles.
They are like little mysteries.
But once you crack the code,
you unlock a whole new level of expression.
Exactly. Yeah. They make your conversation so much more colorful and engaging.
So true. Okay. What's our first idiom?
Let's talk about breaking the ice.
Ah, classic. We've all been there.
Right. You're meeting someone new, and it's kind of awkward at first.
That silence those first few moments. Exactly. You need a way to ease the tension, get the conversation flowing.
And that's where breaking the ice comes in.
It could be a compliment, a funny observation, anything to get things started.
I like to ask open-ended questions about their interests or hobbies.
That's a good one. I usually go for humor.
Humor always works.
A little self-deprecating humor can go a long way.
People appreciate that.
Okay, let's move on to an idiom that captures those tough decisions. Caught between a rock and a hard place.
Ooh, that was relatable.
It is, isn't it? Like you're stuck with no good options.
Every choice has a downside.
It can be so paralyzing. What do you do when you feel like that?
Sometimes just talking it out with someone helps.
Yeah, just getting that outside perspective.
It can really clarify things, or at least make you feel less alone.
For sure. Okay, last idiom for today, and it's a bit ominous. On thin ice.
Ooh, that sounds dangerous.
It is. It's that feeling of being on the verge of messing up.
Like one wrong move and it's all over.
Exactly. It often comes up when trust has been broken or expectations haven't been met.
Makes sense.
Yeah.
And it connects back to that idea of meticulousness.
Right. Being too meticulous can make you afraid to make mistakes.
Afraid to take risks.
Exactly. It's all about balance, isn't it?
Always about balance.
So that wraps up our deep dive into advanced vocabulary.
Wow, we covered a lot.
We did, from single words to phrases to idioms.
And hopefully our listeners are feeling inspired to upgrade their vocabularies.
And remember, it's not just about sounding smart.
Right. It's about expressing yourself in a more powerful and authentic way.
Exactly. So go out there and use those new words, phrases, and idioms.
Don't be afraid to experiment. Have some fun with it.
And who knows, maybe someday you'll be the one coining the next break the ice.
I like it. The power of language is always evolving.
So true. So keep exploring, keep playing with words, and most importantly, keep those conversations flowing.
Couldn't have said it better myself.
That's a wrap on our deep dive.
All right, let's jump right in. Today's deep dive, language learning. We're following Ava's journey to English fluency. And get this, we have her actual podcast to guide us. It's amazing. We hear everything, all the ups and downs, like a real behind-the-scenes look. She goes from beginner to fluent in just 2 years.
Yeah, it's like having a front row seat to her progress, not just the final polished result, but the real, sometimes messy journey. That's where the real learning is, right?
Totally. And speaking of messy, her podcast starts right when she arrives in London. University lectures, trying to order coffee, talk about a baptism by fire. I mean, even watching Friends was a challenge at first. Can you imagine being surrounded by English 24/7 as a beginner?
Total sensory overload, right? Think about it. Even in our native languages, we don't catch every single word. Now imagine doing that in a language you're still learning while also trying to learn vocabulary and grammar. No wonder she felt overwhelmed at first.
There's this one scene in her podcast. She's in her first university lecture. The professor's talking about fundamental principles, and she's just like, fundamental what now?
Yeah.
I think we've all been there at some point in our learning journey.
Oh, absolutely. That feeling of being lost, wanting to give up. It's a common hurdle. But, and this is what I find so inspiring about Ava, she didn't quit. She came up with this clever strategy. Immersion through listening, but with a twist.
Okay, now I'm really curious. What was the twist?
Well, instead of jumping into really complex stuff, she started with podcasts on everyday topics. The key. She listened at a slower speed at first. Then, as she got comfortable, she gradually increased the speed.
Brilliant. Easing yourself in instead of diving head first. Did she mention what types of podcasts worked best?
Yeah, she was into conversational podcasts, like people just chatting about daily life or news. She said it helped her get used to the rhythm and flow of natural speech, way different from that formal, structured language you find in textbooks.
That makes sense. It's how people actually talk, not that perfect grammar you see in books. Did she use any other methods for listening?
Oh, yeah. Audiobooks, but she always had the physical book too, so she could follow along. A great way to connect the spoken and written word. Plus, she rewatched familiar shows like Friends with subtitles. The goal was to pick up common phrases and get used to the natural speed.
So it's not just about quantity, it's quality and strategy. What surprised you most about how Ava approached this listening phase?
Honestly, her patience, the way she gradually increased the difficulty. She didn't expect to understand everything immediately. She understood that progress takes time and was willing to put in the work. It's a great reminder that language learning is a marathon, not a sprint.
Absolutely. So we've tackled the listening hurdle, but what about speaking? That's often the scariest part for language learners. Coming up next, we'll dive into how Ava went from being terrified to order coffee to competently chatting with locals. Buckle up, it's a wild ride.
If listening was a hurdle, speaking was like climbing a mountain for Ava. That feeling, like having to build sentences on the spot, pronunciation worries, that inner voice saying, what if I mess up? It's enough to make you just want to stay silent.
Oh, tell me about it. And Ava's podcast really captures that anxiety. She actually shares this recording of herself trying to order a coffee.
Yeah.
She wants a large, but all that comes out is, I want big coffee.
It's kind of painful, but so relatable. I've totally been there in my own language learning.
It happens to everyone, that fear of speaking, making mistakes, sounding silly, it can be paralyzing. But here's the thing about Ava. Instead of letting fear win, she tackled it head on.
That's brave. How'd she conquer this speaking mountain? Did she have a plan?
She did. A multi-pronged approach, starting with the basics, practicing phrases and pronunciation alone, in front of a mirror, low pressure, Then, conversation groups with other English learners. It's a safe space to practice, everyone's in the same boat, no need to be perfect. That's a great idea. A supportive environment, making mistakes, learning together.
Did she mention what was helpful about those groups specifically?
She said they helped her overcome that initial fear of speaking. She realized everyone makes mistakes. It's okay to laugh at yourself sometimes. It's all part of the process. But she didn't stop there. She knew she had to push further, so she started talking to locals, even if it meant stumbling through sentences or repeating herself.
Wow, that takes guts. Putting herself out there, knowing she might make mistakes with native speakers. Does she have any strategies for when she felt lost for words?
Oh yeah, Ava always had this little notebook with key phrases for different situations, and she wasn't afraid to ask people to repeat or speak slower. Resourcefulness, not letting awkwardness stop her.
Such a good tip. It's easy to feel embarrassed, but most people are patient when you're making an effort. But she didn't just rely on random conversations, did she? Nope. Ava took a speaking course focused on role-playing everyday situations, ordering food, asking directions, small talk, all those things that can be nerve-wracking. She said it was super helpful to practice in a structured environment, get feedback from a teacher and other students.
It's like she was systematically building up her speaking muscle, targeting different communication skills. Did the podcast mention how she felt about all this speaking practice? Did the fear ever go away?
It's amazing. Over time, the fear just kind of faded. The more she spoke, the more confident she became. She realized people were patient and mistakes were just part of learning. That mindset shift is crucial for anyone learning a new language.
It sounds like she embraced progress over perfection. Not about sounding native overnight, but constantly challenging yourself, getting out of your comfort zone. It's so inspiring.
It is. And speaking of pushing boundaries, Ava's journey takes another turn with reading. From children's books to complex academic texts, she finds a way to not just understand, but enjoy reading in English. We'll dig into that fascinating part after a quick... You know what? No break. Let's keep going.
All right, diving right back in. We're on Ava's language learning journey, and now it's all about reading. What's fascinating is she goes from overwhelmed by academic jargon to actually enjoying reading in English. That's quite a change.
It is, and it shows how those language skills, they kind of build on each other. Remember how she nailed listening first? That really set her up for success with reading.
Right. That scene in the library comes to mind. She's staring at her textbook, totally lost, all that comprehensive analysis. And technical terms, it's like hitting a vocab wall. I can almost feel that panic. Did she say how she got past that feeling?
She did. And it's a strategy that could help a lot of learners. It's called a graded approach. Instead of forcing herself to understand those tough academic texts right away, she started simpler, like children's books, graded readers, those books made for language learners. Clear language, familiar themes, anything approachable.
That's smart, like building up your reading stamina, starting small before a marathon. Did she mention any specific books or authors she liked early on?
Not specific titles, but she did say children's books were surprisingly helpful. Simple language, engaging stories, often with pictures to help you understand. She also liked graphic novels. The visuals and text together made it easier to follow.
Great tip. It's all about finding stuff you actually enjoy reading, makes learning more fun. So as she got more confident, did she move on to harder stuff?
Absolutely. Gradually, she increased the difficulty, moving to news articles, then short stories, and finally, yes, even those tough textbooks. But here's the thing. She didn't just passively read. She actively engaged with the text, using different strategies to understand better.
Okay, I'm intrigued. What did actively engaging look like for Ava? Any specific techniques?
Definitely. Ava loved using dictionaries, not just for the meaning of words, but for those little nuances, how they're used in different contexts. She also kept a vocabulary journal, writing down new words, even drawing pictures to help her remember.
That's clever, making those unfamiliar words more tangible and memorable, like creating your own personalized dictionary tailored to your learning journey.
Exactly. And another trick, reading aloud. It helped with pronunciation, of course, but also made her slow down, absorb each sentence. Great way to internalize the rhythm of the language.
It's like training your brain to process the language on all levels, visually, orally, even kinesthetically. Did she talk about how she felt when she started using these active reading strategies?
She said it made a huge difference. At first, it felt unnatural, slow, but over time, it became automatic, and she remembered more, enjoyed reading more. It's a good reminder, sometimes slowing down actually speeds up your learning in the long run.
So true. It's about finding what works for you and being patient. So listening, speaking, reading. We can't forget writing. Grammar struggles, finding the right words. Writing can be tough for language learners. Ready to unpack Ava's writing journey?
Absolutely. Writing is often seen as the hardest skill, right?
Oh.
You need good vocabulary, grammar, but also style, tone, organization. And Ava's podcast gives us this raw look at her first essay draft in English. Short sentences, grammar errors, lack of flow, it's all there, something many learners can relate to.
Oh, I know I can. I remember those early days writing in another language. It feels like you're trying to express yourself with one hand tied behind your back. Did Ava share how she tackled those early writing challenges?
She did. It's simple but effective. She started a daily journal. Not about perfect grammar or fancy writing, just getting comfortable expressing herself, even if it was just a few sentences at first.
Great starting point. Takes the pressure off, lets you focus on getting your thoughts down. Did she mention how she dealt with those grammar gremlins we all face in a new language?
Oh, yeah. Ava embraced technology. She became a pro at using grammar checking tools to find her common errors and learn from them. But the key is, she didn't just blindly accept the corrections. She took time to understand the why. She'd look up grammar rules, do practice exercises, really trying to learn the correct way.
That's smart. Not just fixing the mistake, but understanding it to avoid it next time. But she didn't just rely on grammar checkers, right?
Nope. Ava knew feedback from others was important. She'd ask teachers, classmates, even friends to read her writing, give suggestions. It's a great way to get a fresh perspective, find areas to improve.
Like having an extra set of eyes to catch what you might miss. Did she mention any specific feedback that was especially helpful?
She did. Ava found feedback on the overall structure and organization super helpful. She realized she wrote in short, choppy sentences, and her ideas weren't always in a logical order, so she started focusing on topic sentences, transitions, the flow of her writing. She even mentioned mastering connectors, words like however, therefore, in contrast, to make her writing smoother and more sophisticated.
Those little connecting words make such a difference. So by the end of her 2 years, had she overcome those writing hurdles?
She had. Ava was writing well-structured essays, expressing herself clearly and confidently. She even gave a presentation in English, showing off her fluency to her classmates and professors. Just goes to show, consistent effort, targeted practice, and embracing mistakes really pays off.
Ava's story is truly inspiring. She went from lost and overwhelmed to owning the English language in just 2 years. It's a powerful reminder that fluency isn't about being perfect, but about communicating effectively, expressing yourself.
Totally agree. Ava's journey shows fluency as a process, not a destination. It's taking small steps every day, embracing those stumbles, finding joy in learning. It's a journey anyone can take, no matter where they start.
So for our listeners on their own language learning adventures, what's the key takeaway from Ava's experience?
If we boil down all of Ava's wisdom into one question, it's this. What's one small thing you can do today to use more English? Could be listening to a podcast, reading an article, or even just thinking about your day in English. Every step counts.
That's a great question to think about as we wrap up our deep dive. So to everyone listening, remember Ava's story. Embrace the challenge, celebrate those wins, and never stop exploring language learning. Until next time, keep those ears tuned in, those tongues practicing, and those minds open to new possibilities.
All right, let's do this. Get ready for a deep dive into something really cool. Transition words.
Ooh, yeah.
We've got a ton of research and notes on this, but we're going to kind of like boil it down to the essentials, the stuff that really matters. You
Right,
know?
like the biggest bang for your buck.
Yeah, exactly.
So, I think it's funny, right?
Yeah.
We spend so much time on vocabulary and grammar,
Yeah.
all the sort of like quote unquote rules.
Well, right.
But transition words, which are so important for sounding fluent and confident
Yeah.
and persuasive, they often get overlooked.
It's true. And one of the things that really jumped out at me from the research is like how transition words can help us avoid that, that and problem we all have sometimes.
Yeah, for sure.
We're all guilty of it.
So instead of saying, I went to the store and I bought milk and then I came home, you could say, I went to the store after picking up some milk, I headed back home.
Yes. It's so much smoother.
Much smoother, much more, sophisticated.
So the sources that we looked at, they break down transition words into all these categories. And one that I thought was really cool was adding information. So it's not just like listing things, but it's building on your idea.
Yeah, it's all about connecting the dots, right?
Exactly.
Like making your speech flow,
Yeah.
showing how one idea leads to the next.
And they give us some examples like moreover and furthermore. Those sound kind of fancy, right?
Yeah, they have a sort of, a touch of formality.
Yeah.
Which actually makes them very effective.
Okay.
It's not like you're just, you're not just throwing out random thoughts.
Right.
You're showing that you put some thought into this.
Yeah.
Imagine like, you're making a presentation. This product is going to increase efficiency. Furthermore, it will save you money in the long run.
You sound like a CEO suddenly.
Right.
No, what about when you want to give an example to support your point? And you're in a more casual setting, like you're having dinner with friends.
Sure.
What would you use then?
I think to illustrate is a nice way to do that.
Okay.
It signals to your listener that you're about to, paint a picture with your words.
Okay. Yeah.
Right. So let's say you're talking about a concert you went to. The concert was amazing. To illustrate, the lead singer did this incredible guitar solo that had the entire crowd on their feet.
I can hear it. I can hear it now. Now, another one that I was really curious about is the contrasting ideas category. So, sometimes you want to spice things up a little bit.
Absolutely.
Throw in a little debate, a little friendly disagreement.
Yeah.
And the sources point to however, on the other hand, and nevertheless.
Right.
So those all show contrast, but is there a subtle difference between those three?
Yeah, that's a great question. However, I would say is kind of your go-to for a simple, straightforward contrast.
Okay.
Like, I love pizza, however, I try not to eat it every day.
Okay, yeah.
On the other hand, I think introduces a more balanced perspective.
Okay.
So you're kind of like, you're presenting both sides of the coin.
Right.
Like you're weighing the pros and cons. On the one hand, working from home is really convenient. On the other hand, I kind of miss the social interaction of being in an office.
Yeah. Yeah, so it's like you're setting up almost like a mini debate within your sentence.
Exactly.
Exactly.
That's a good way to think about it.
And then nevertheless, I think is kind of your secret weapon for adding a little bit of drama. Like it suggests a sense of perseverance despite obstacles. The marathon was grueling. Nevertheless, I finished the race.
Yeah, like I did it anyway.
Exactly.
Okay, so we've covered adding information, contrasting ideas. What else? What other gems have we got? Well, let's talk about cause and effect. I mean, this is where you really get to show off your logical thinking skills.
Okay, yeah.
And two of the real heavy hitters here are as a result and therefore.
Okay. So how do those make me sound like a logic master?
Well, they show the relationship between actions and outcomes.
Right. Okay.
They create this clear line of reasoning. So, for example, we implemented a new marketing strategy. As a result, our sales increased by 15%.
Like you're connecting the dots, basically.
Yeah, exactly.
And therefore is kind of similar.
It is similar. I think it often implies more direct, conclusive relationship.
Yep.
Like, the traffic was terrible this morning, therefore I was late for work.
Can't argue with that.
Nope.
So we've covered adding information, contrasting ideas, cause and effect.
Yeah, we're on a roll.
I'm feeling pretty good about this, I gotta say.
Yeah.
But I'm sure there's more, right?
Oh, there's so much more. I mean, we haven't even touched on, disagreeing politely or expressing time, or even like concluding your thoughts in a really effective way. We're just getting started.
Okay, let's keep going.
Okay, so let's dive into those tricky disagreements we talked about.
Yeah.
Because of the sources we looked at, they really emphasize sounding polite and respectful, especially when you don't agree with someone.
Right.
Nobody wants to be a jerk.
Right, exactly.
Especially at work or even like with your family.
Yeah.
You want to be able to disagree without sounding like you're attacking the other person.
Right.
So how do you do that?
Yeah, how do you walk that fine line?
I think it's all about, you have to assert your viewpoint.
Okay.
But you also have to acknowledge the other person's perspective.
Yeah.
Right? And transition words can help you do that.
Okay.
They can help you strike that balance.
So give me an example, like let's say a friend wants to go hiking, but I'd rather just stay home and chill.
Sure.
How do I say no without sounding, lazy or whatever?
Well, you could say, I appreciate that you want to go hiking, but I'm feeling a bit tired today. Maybe we could do something more low-key instead.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
So you see how it creates a contrast, but it's not dismissive.
Right.
You're not just like, no, I don't want to do that.
Yeah.
You're acknowledging their idea.
Right.
But you're also, you're stating your own preference.
And I like the suggestion at the end to kind of offer an alternative.
Exactly.
Okay, that's good.
And you could even take it a step further.
Okay.
You can add a phrase like, I understand where you're coming from, or I see your point, but.
Yeah, those are good.
So you're really showing that you're listening.
Right.
And you're considering their perspective.
Okay, I'm definitely going to try those out. So we talked about disagreeing, but what about telling a story?
Uh-huh.
And you want to keep the listener engaged, keep them kind of on the edge of their seat.
Sure.
Are there transition words that can help with that?
Oh, absolutely. Remember that word meanwhile?
Oh, yeah.
That we talked about earlier?
Yeah.
That's a great one for adding suspense.
Okay, how so?
Well, imagine you're telling a story, a mystery or something.
Uh-huh.
And you could say, I was searching for clues in the library.
Oh.
Meanwhile, my partner was interviewing witnesses at the crime scene.
Oh, wow.
So it's like you're creating these two parallel narratives.
Yeah.
And it's building suspense
Nice.
because things are happening at the same time.
I can see the movie like playing in my head as you're describing it.
Exactly.
Right.
Meanwhile is all about that simultaneity, right? Things happening at the same time.
Okay, that's cool.
Another thing I think about is in a more professional setting, if you're giving a presentation, for example,
Yeah.
You've got those words like first, next, then, and finally.
Mm-hmm.
Those are really good for guiding the listener through your argument
Right.
or your presentation.
Right.
They're like road signs. They
Yeah.
show people where you're going.
And they make you sound so organized too.
Absolutely. It shows that you've thought this through.
Yeah.
That you have a plan.
Okay, so we've covered a lot of ground here.
Yeah.
Adding information, contrasting ideas, cause and effect, disagreeing politely, building suspense,
Yeah.
and explaining things clearly.
We are on fire.
We are on fire. But What about those all-important conclusions?
Yeah.
How do we wrap it all up?
Well, that's where those summarizing and concluding transitions come in.
Okay.
You've got the classics like in conclusion, to sum up, and
Yeah.
overall.
Yeah.
But I think a really powerful one is in short.
Okay.
It conveys this sense of efficiency and authority.
I like that.
It's like, okay, I've said what I need to say, and now here's the bottom line.
Yeah.
Right. So you can say something like, in short, investing in this project is a no-brainer.
Boom. Mic drop.
Exactly. So, I think what's really cool about transition words is that they're like the finishing touches on a work of art.
I like that.
Like they add this polish, they add sophistication, they add clarity to your communication.
But you don't have to memorize a whole dictionary of them.
Yeah, no, not at all.
So where should people start? What's a good way to get into this?
I think it's about starting small and being mindful.
Okay.
Pick a few transitions from each category that you like and just try using them consciously.
Okay.
In your conversations, in your writing.
Yeah.
Just pay attention to how they feel.
Yeah.
How they impact the flow of your words.
That's great advice. It's like anything else, the more you practice, the more natural it becomes.
Exactly. And you know what else I think is really helpful?
What's that?
Is paying attention to how other people use transition words.
Okay.
Listen to podcasts, watch TED Talks.
Oh, yeah.
Read articles by great writers.
Yeah.
And you'll start to notice the patterns. You'll start to see how they use transitions to guide their audience.
It's like a free masterclass.
It is. It's like a behind-the-scenes look at how the pros do it.
So as we're wrapping up this part of our deep dive, what's one final, piece of wisdom you would share about mastering transitions?
I would say the key thing to remember is that transition words are tools. They're not tricks.
Right.
They're not about sounding, smarter or more sophisticated than you are.
Yeah.
It's really about expressing yourself.
Right.
Clearly, confidently, and authentically.
I like that a lot. It's not about, being someone you're not. It's really about using language as a way to connect with people,
Yeah, exactly. And making your message more impactful,
Yeah.
more engaging. And transitions are a big part of that.
It's funny you say that. I was reading one of the sources we looked at.
Yeah.
And it mentioned how transition words can actually affect our mood. And how we kind of perceive the world around us. So it's like they're not just connecting ideas, but also emotions.
That's really interesting. I mean, there's a whole field of study called cognitive linguistics that looks at that connection between language and thought.
Oh, wow.
And yeah, it turns out that even little changes in the words we use can change how we understand and feel about things.
So would you say that mastering transitions isn't just about sounding better, but it's about thinking better?
Yeah, I think there's definitely a connection there. When you're more aware of the little nuances of language, you're more tuned into how words can shape our perceptions, and that can make you a more a more critical thinker, more persuasive speaker, and an even more empathetic listener.
It's like we've discovered this whole secret world of communication almost that most people aren't even aware of.
Right. It's like we've cracked the code.
Yeah.
And now we can use that to our advantage to make our communication more effective, more meaningful, more enjoyable even.
I'm ready to start using all this stuff, honestly. I'm gonna start paying more attention to how I use transitions in my everyday conversations. It's like a fun little challenge.
Yeah, I love that. And remember, even small changes can make a big difference. Just try incorporating 1 or 2 new transitions a day. You'll be surprised how quickly they become second nature to you.
So as we wrap up this deep dive into transition words, what's one final thought, one kind of provocative thought you would leave our listener with?
Well, I would encourage our listener to think of transition words as bridges.
Okay, yeah.
They connect ideas, they connect people,
Yep.
and they connect us to this wider world of communication.
Yeah.
And the more bridges we build, the stronger, the more vibrant our communication becomes.
That's a really beautiful way to put it. It's a great reminder that language is powerful. It's a way to connect and understand each other.
Absolutely.
Well, on that note, I think it's time to wrap up this episode of The Deep Dive. We hope you've enjoyed this journey into the fascinating world of transition words. And we challenge you to go out there and use this knowledge to take your communication skills to the next level.
Hey, everyone. Ready to become a reading rock star?
I like that, reading rock star.
Well, because today we're diving deep into how to power up those English reading skills.
Awesome.
You know, whether you're prepping for a big exam or just want to, like, finally conquer that massive book everyone keeps talking about.
Yeah.
This is for you.
Absolutely.
We're taking an awesome podcast episode called 10 Tips to Improve Your Reading Skills for Beginners.
Yeah.
And, like, dissecting it.
Okay.
Extracting those little golden nuggets that you can put into practice today.
Love it.
So no more feeling overwhelmed or lost.
Yeah. No more information overload.
Exactly. Let's jump right in. Tip number 1 is all about starting simple.
Makes sense.
It's so tempting to just grab the most complex,
Yeah.
super intellectual book.
Right.
But just like you wouldn't climb Mount Everest without any training.
Good point.
You don't want to jump into like War and Peace.
Yeah, you'll just set yourself up for failure.
Totally. The podcast episode really emphasizes that starting with achievable material is key.
It's all about building that foundation.
Exactly. Like, think children's books.
Oh, yeah.
Graded readers for English learners.
Perfect example.
That way you can like grasp the fundamentals without feeling totally lost.
And you know those small wins, those early victories?
Yes.
They really fuel your motivation to keep going.
Makes total sense. Tip number 2 is something I actually used when I was learning Spanish.
Oh, really? I'm intrigued.
Reading aloud.
Oh, wow.
I know it can feel kind of silly at first,
I can imagine.
but trust me, there's a method to this madness.
Okay, I'm listening.
It could help me so much with pronunciation and just like getting comfortable with the language.
There's actually a lot of science behind this.
Really?
Oh, yeah. When you read aloud, you're using multiple senses at once.
I see.
You're seeing the words and hearing them simultaneously.
Makes sense.
And that strengthens the neural pathways in your brain responsible for language processing.
So it's like a workout for your brain.
Exactly. Think of it like building a superhighway for information.
So it's not just about pronunciation then?
Nope, not at all. It actually helps with comprehension and remembering what you read, too.
Wow, that's amazing. I never thought of it that way.
It's kind of like when you were a kid learning your first language.
Yeah.
You spent a lot of time listening to others talk and then repeating what you heard.
Right.
Reading aloud taps into that same process.
Fascinating. So it's like we're tapping into our inner child.
In a way, yes.
Oh.
And that brings us to the third tip.
Okay, what's next?
It builds on this idea of being active.
Active reading.
Yes. The episode talks about how important it is to understand new words in context.
Oh, yeah, I remember this one. Instead of just memorizing a word,
Right.
you learn it as part of a sentence.
Exactly. Like the podcast gives a great example.
Lay it on me.
Instead of just learning the word happy, learn it in a sentence like, she was happy because she got a new puppy.
Oh, that's a good one.
Rad. It just makes it stick so much better.
It's like the word comes alive.
Exactly. You're not just learning the definition, you're understanding its emotional weight.
Yeah. You get a sense of like why she's happy.
And how that word connects to other words.
It paints a picture.
Exactly.
Okay, so we've got starting simple, reading aloud, and learning in context.
Powerful stuff, right?
Totally.
Yeah.
What are tips 4 and 5?
Well, they're all about using tools to enhance your reading experience.
Okay, tools and resources.
The podcast suggests using a bilingual dictionary.
Which makes sense, especially if you're a beginner.
Yeah, it's like having a translator right there with you.
Helping you navigate those tricky words and phrases.
And then tip number 5 goes hand in hand with that one.
Oh, okay, I'm curious.
It's about using visuals.
Like pictures.
Yeah, the podcast talks about picture books.
Right.
Which are great for beginners, obviously. But even experienced readers can benefit from creating their own mental images.
Oh, I see.
Like visualizing what you're reading can be a game changer.
I can imagine.
It takes those words on the page and turns them into like a movie in your mind. It makes the information so much more engaging and memorable.
So you're not just reading words, you're experiencing a story.
Precisely.
All right, so we're halfway through our deep dive into these 10 tips.
Feeling empowered yet?
I know I am. Starting simple, reading aloud, learning in context, using a bilingual dictionary, and visualizing what we read.
It's like we're assembling our reading toolkit.
I love that analogy. But we've only just scratched the surface.
There's so much more to explore.
I can't wait.
Okay, so we're back, ready for more reading tips.
Oh, yeah. Hit me with those next gems.
All right, so tip number 6.
Okay.
This one's all about consistency.
Makes sense. Got to stay committed, right?
Absolutely. The podcast really emphasizes making reading a regular habit.
Like even just a few minutes each day.
Exactly. Even 5 minutes can make a difference.
I can see that.
It all adds up.
I know, but finding the time is tough.
I hear ya. Everyone's busy.
But I guess you're right. Every little bit counts.
Think of it this way. 5 minutes a day is over 30 hours of reading in a year.
Wow, that puts it into perspective.
Right.
Okay, I'm convinced. Gotta make time for reading.
Awesome. Now let's move on to tip number 7.
Okay. I'm all ears.
This one encourages readers to ask questions.
While they're reading.
Exactly.
I actually started doing that recently.
Oh, yeah.
And it's been a game changer.
I bet. It turns reading into a conversation.
Yeah, instead of just passively taking in the words.
Right, you're actively engaging with the text.
I feel like I'm actually understanding and remembering more.
Exactly. It's like you're digging deeper, making connections.
Okay, so consistency and asking questions.
Powerful stuff.
What's next? Give me tips 8 and 9.
Okay, so these focus on audiobooks and summarizing.
Audiobooks, I love those.
Yeah, they're great, especially if you're an auditory learner.
Plus, you can listen to them anywhere.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Commuting, exercising, even doing chores.
And summarization, that's a good one, too.
It really forces you to think about what you've read.
Yeah, like, can I explain the main points in my own words?
Exactly. If so, you're on the right track.
If not.
Well, it might be a sign you need to reread certain sections.
Makes sense.
It's all about active learning.
I'm loving these tips. All right, what's the final tip, the grand finale?
This one's simple but super important. Be patient and have fun.
Yeah, I was hoping they'd mention that.
Sometimes we get so caught up in being perfect.
Right, we forget to enjoy the process.
Learning a language should be enjoyable.
It's like exploring new worlds.
Discovering new perspectives.
Totally. And there's so many ways to make reading fun.
Absolutely. Choose books you actually like.
Yeah, join a book club.
Start a reading challenge with friends.
The possibilities are endless.
The key is to find what works for you.
Make reading a part of your life you actually look forward to.
Exactly. So as we're wrapping up this deep dive, remember becoming a proficient reader is a journey.
It's not a race.
It takes time, effort, and, a willingness to embrace the ups and downs.
I agree. There will be times when you feel frustrated.
For sure.
But every step you take is a step in the right direction.
Don't be afraid to make mistakes.
Mistakes are part of the learning process.
Embrace them, analyze them, learn from them.
Okay, we've explored these 10 tips in depth.
From start to finish.
But there's one final point I want to touch on before we wrap up. It's like, how do we actually make these tips work for us?
Yeah, it's one thing to hear them.
Right.
But actually putting them into practice is where the magic happens.
Because what works for one person might not work for another.
Exactly. Some people love audiobooks.
Yeah.
Others prefer holding a physical book.
Totally. So it's all about experimenting, right?
For sure. Try reading aloud one day.
Okay.
Then try visualizing the next.
I like that.
See what clicks for you.
It's about finding your own groove.
Exactly. And that kind of brings me to the thought I want to leave our listeners with today.
Okay, I'm ready.
Think about just one thing you'll read differently or more often starting today.
Ooh, I love that. It's a challenge.
It is. Because knowledge without action...
Well, it's kind of useless, right?
It's like a seed that never gets planted.
Ooh, that's a good analogy.
It has potential, but it needs the right conditions to grow.
And those conditions come from us.
Exactly. Choose your reading material wisely.
Right.
Make time for it every day.
Even if it's just for a few minutes.
Exactly. Embrace the tools and techniques that work for you.
And most importantly,
have fun.
Yes. Make it enjoyable.
Because when you enjoy something, you naturally want to do it more.
So true. Well, I think we've covered a lot of ground today.
We have 10 amazing tips.
From starting simple to having fun.
And everything in between.
I hope our listeners feel empowered to level up their reading skills.
I think they do.
So go out there, explore the world of books, and remember...
You're not alone on this journey.
We're all in this together.
Happy reading, everyone.
Okay, so learning English all on your own, it's pretty awesome that you're taking that on. But
yeah.
I totally get it. Sometimes it feels like you're just drowning in a notion of vocabulary and all the grammar rules. And, idioms and all that stuff.
Absolutely. That feeling of just being completely overwhelmed, I think, is something that most language learners face, no matter what language you're tackling.
Right.
And that's why I think this is perfect, this deep dive that we're doing into the source material that you shared with us, which was an episode called The Best Roadmap for Self-Study English, a Beginner's Guide. And it's really packed with advice. It's a true roadmap to fluency. It covers listening, speaking, reading, writing.
Yeah, and what's so cool is it's not just like the usual, vague tips.
Right.
There are some really specific exercises and like twists on classic advice that I thought were really interesting. So we're going to unpack those.
Yeah, let's get into it.
It kicks off with listening, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And the podcast host really hammers home that listening is the foundation, but not just to understand, but to really soak up how English sounds naturally.
Yeah, and they talk about, listening to slow and clear English, especially for beginners.
Right.
And they actually suggest some podcasts specifically made for learners, like BBC Learning English and ESL Pod.
Yeah, those are classics.
It's funny, I never even thought about like how many resources are out there just for people learning English,
Right.
This deep dive is already
It's amazing.
opening my eyes.
It is. And what's great is you can literally start listening to those today. Right now.
Yeah.
But then they get even more specific.
Oh,
they suggest audiobooks paired with the actual text.
Oh.
So you're hearing the pronunciation.
Oh, wow.
But you're also seeing how the words are spelled.
Okay.
So it's like a double whammy for vocabulary building.
That's clever.
Yeah.
Okay, I love this next exercise. It's so simple, but it's brilliant. They suggest listening to a 5-minute clip, picking out 5 new words, and trying to guess their meaning from context.
Great.
It's like a little detective game, but for language.
Yeah. And it forces you to really pay attention, wouldn't you say?
Right.
Like if you're just passively listening,
Yeah.
the words kind of wash over you.
Right.
But having to actively pick out and decipher these new words keeps you engaged.
Yeah. Yeah. Totally makes sense.
Yeah.
Then they move on to watching videos with subtitles.
Yes.
It's like training wheels for your ears.
Absolutely. It's a fantastic stepping stone, especially if you're coming from a language with very different sounds and rhythms.
Right.
I used a similar approach when I was learning German, and it helped me immensely.
Yeah.
They recommend shows like Friends, which makes sense. It's fun. The language is very everyday.
Right. Yeah.
But Peppa Pig, I wouldn't have thought of that.
Yeah.
But the simplicity is perfect.
It's like going back to basics, right? And again, something you can do even if you only have a few minutes.
Exactly.
They then suggest trying to repeat lines from movies, which is a fun way to practice pronunciation.
It's a fantastic idea. I mean, who hasn't tried to imitate their favorite movie characters at some point, right?
Right.
And the podcast points out that you're more likely to stick with it if the content is enjoyable.
Of course, yeah. Pick something you like. Don't, force yourself to watch documentaries if that's not your thing.
Right, exactly.
But then they bring up this technique called shadowing.
Yeah.
Which I have to admit I'm not familiar with. Can you kind of explain what that is?
Sure. Shadowing is basically mimicking a native speaker as closely as possible. Like you're their shadow.
Okay.
You're copying their intonation, their rhythm, their pronunciation.
Okay.
It can feel a little awkward at first, but it's incredibly effective for developing a more natural sounding accent.
So it's not just about understanding what they're saying, but how they're saying it.
Exactly.
Okay, that's fascinating.
Yeah.
They even mentioned a YouTube channel, Rachel's English.
Oh, yeah.
Specifically for pronunciation.
Oh, that's a great one.
So you can literally start practicing this today,
Right now.
Yeah, and I thought it was really interesting how this section kind of wrapped up.
Okay.
They really emphasize creating a daily habit, even if it's just for 10 or 15 minutes.
Yeah.
It's like building a muscle, but for your ears and your brain.
It is. And consistent exposure is key. Just like when you were a kid absorbing your first language.
Right. Yeah. It's about those small, consistent actions over time.
Absolutely.
This is so inspiring. I'm already feeling motivated to revamp my own English practice.
I love it.
Speaking of practice, the podcast then jumps into the speaking section.
Yeah.
Which I think for a lot of learners can feel like the scariest part.
Definitely can be, but the podcast offers some really practical tips for overcoming that fear and building fluency. And one that I found particularly interesting is talking to yourself in English.
Wait, they suggest actually like talking to yourself. I mean, I talk to myself all the time.
Of course.
But usually in my own language.
Yeah. Well, it might sound a little silly at first, but think about it this way. It's like a safe space to practice speaking without judgment.
Yeah.
You're not worried about making mistakes in front of anyone else.
Right.
And they even give this simple example. Instead of thinking, I want coffee.
Yeah.
Say it out loud, I'm going to make a cup of coffee. It seems small,
Yeah.
but it gets you used to vocalizing your thoughts in English.
It's like you're taking those thoughts that are trapped in your head
Yes.
and giving them a voice, literally.
Exactly.
I love it.
Yeah.
They then suggest describing your surroundings in English, which, again, you can do anywhere, anytime. Yeah.
Exactly. And it's brilliant for expanding your vocabulary.
Okay.
Let's say you're walking through a park.
Yeah.
Instead of just thinking, oh, there's a tree,
Right.
you might describe it as a tall, leafy oak tree with branches reaching towards the sky.
Wow, that's beautiful.
Right. It challenges you to use more descriptive language
Wow.
and think about those nuances of English.
That's a good point. And while practicing solo is great,
Yeah.
they also emphasize the value of having a speaking partner.
Absolutely. Having someone to practice with can make the whole process less intimidating.
Right.
And they mention some really useful tools for finding language partners.
Yeah, they recommend apps like Hello Talk and Tandem,
Yeah, I've heard of those.
which connect you with native speakers.
I'm all over the world.
Yeah, that's cool.
And they also suggest looking for local language exchange groups,
Okay.
which is a nice option for those who prefer face-to-face interaction.
Right.
So it's great that they provide options for different learning styles
Okay,
and preferences.
Okay, this next challenge I thought was really intriguing.
Okay.
They propose speaking for 1 minute straight on a given topic.
Oh, wow.
Like preparing for, those elevator pitch moments
Yeah.
where you need to be.
Concise, confident.
Yeah, exactly.
I love that analogy.
It really is about training yourself to
Express your thoughts clearly
yeah.
and concisely, which is a valuable skill beyond language learning.
Oh, for sure. For sure. Yeah.
It really is.
And, good practice for real life situations where you might not have a lot of time to explain yourself.
Right.
But they also stress the importance of recording yourself speaking,
Yes.
which, I don't know, can be a little daunting, even though I know it's helpful.
I understand the hesitation. It can be a little cringeworthy to listen back to your own voice,
Yes.
especially when you're still learning.
Right.
But remember, the goal isn't to sound perfect. It's about developing self-awareness.
Right. It's about noticing those little things that you might not realize you're doing, like a certain pronunciation mistake or something
Exactly.
that you keep making.
Yeah,
And they emphasize that it's all about progress, not perfection.
absolutely. And sometimes it's good to have a little reminder that even native speakers make mistakes.
Yeah.
We're all human.
Oh, totally. All the time.
So don't be afraid to stumble and experiment.
Okay, now I'm really feeling motivated to put these speaking tips into practice.
too.
But before we get too carried away,
Okay.
the podcast then who's on to reading, right?
Yes, reading is like a superpower for building vocabulary and deepening your understanding of English grammar.
It's like you're absorbing the building blocks of the language, wouldn't you say?
I love that analogy. It's so true. And they emphasize the importance of starting with simple texts,
Okay.
like children's books or graded readers.
Oh?
And they even mention the BBC Learning English website again,
Oh,
which seems to be a recurring theme
it is.
and a great resource.
I'm making a note of that now for those who might not be familiar.
Yeah.
Can you explain what graded readers are exactly?
Sure. Graded readers are books specifically written for language learners.
Okay.
They come in different levels, so you can start with simpler texts and gradually work your way up
Oh, okay.
for more complex ones as your reading skills improve.
So it's like a bridge between children's books and, say, classic literature.
Exactly.
That's really helpful.
Yeah.
And what I love about this section is the focus on active reading. They suggest an exercise where you read a short story and underline any new words you encounter.
I like that.
It's simple, but it forces you to engage with the text differently.
Yeah, it's not just about passively taking in the words,
Right.
but actively seeking out new vocabulary and trying to understand its meaning within the context of the story.
Right.
And speaking of context,
Yeah.
they really hammer home the importance of using context clues to decipher meaning,
Oh my gosh, yes.
rather than relying solely on a dictionary.
I can't tell you how many times I've gotten lost in a dictionary black hole, looking up one word after another
We've all been there.
and completely losing track of what I was originally reading.
Yeah, it happens. And they give a great example to illustrate this.
Okay.
The power of context clues.
Huh?
They use a simple sentence. The puppy wagged its tail happily.
Okay.
You don't need a dictionary to figure out that wagged probably means moved in this context.
It's like a light bulb moment when you realize you can figure out the meaning of a word without having to constantly interrupt your flow.
Exactly. And that's such a valuable skill, especially as you start tackling more complex texts.
Right.
Right.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah.
They then suggest another interesting exercise, reading a paragraph every day and summarizing it in one sentence,
Oh, that's good.
which, sounds like a great way to improve reading comprehension
Definitely.
and the ability to extract key information.
Yeah, it's almost like you're training your brain to be more efficient and focused.
Right.
Which is so crucial in today's world.
Yes.
Where we're constantly bombarded with information from all sides.
But tell me about it.
Right.
Okay, I have to admit I'm a little skeptical about reading aloud.
Okay.
It feels a little awkward.
Uh-huh.
And honestly, kind of childish.
I understand the hesitation. It's not something we typically do as adults. But there are real benefits to it. Reading aloud forces you to slow down, pronounce each word carefully, and really internalize the sounds of the language.
Okay.
It strengthens the connection between your reading and speaking skills.
So it's like you're training your mouth to say the words correctly.
Exactly.
Even if you're not speaking to another person.
Yeah.
Okay.
And they even suggest recording yourself reading a news article.
Okay.
Which seems a little less intimidating than, say, reading Shakespeare aloud.
That's a good point. News articles are something that we encounter regularly.
Right.
And the language is generally more straightforward. But
yeah.
like with all these other tips, the key is consistency.
Right. Absolutely. Even just 15 minutes of reading each day can make a significant difference over time.
Yeah.
It's about making it a habit, like brushing your teeth.
Okay.
Or going for a walk.
So it's about integrating these little pockets of learning into your daily routine.
Exactly. Yeah.
Which is so much less daunting than trying to block out like hours for studying.
It is. It is.
Exactly. And speaking of integrating learning into your everyday life, the podcast then moves on to writing.
Oh, the big one.
Which can feel like the most intimidating skill to master.
It can be.
Yeah, writing always feels like this big, scary monster.
But they reassure us that the goal isn't to become the next Shakespeare.
Okay, good.
It's about getting comfortable expressing your thoughts and ideas in written English.
Right.
Focusing on clarity and accuracy.
Okay.
Rather than literary brilliance.
Okay, that makes me feel so much better.
Good.
They start with a simple suggestion, which is keeping a journal.
Yes.
Just jotting down a few sentences about your day.
Exactly. Something like, today I went to the park. The weather was sunny and warm. It's about getting comfortable with the basics of sentence structure and using simple vocabulary.
Yeah, my journal entries are definitely a bit more dramatic than that.
Well, this isn't about winning any literary awards.
Right.
It's about practicing the fundamentals of writing in English.
Yeah. And they also suggest describing a place you've been, like a park, in detail.
Yes.
Again, using those descriptive words.
Right.
And practicing sentence construction.
It's a great way to challenge yourself to use a wider range of vocabulary and grammatical structures.
Okay, this next tip is so manageable, it almost feels too easy.
Okay.
They recommend writing just 5 sentences each night before bed.
But that's the beauty of it.
Yeah.
It's about making these habits so ingrained that they become second nature.
Okay.
And there's some interesting research that suggests practicing a new skill before bed
Oh, really?
can actually help your brain consolidate the information while you sleep.
No way. So you're telling me I can improve my English while I sleep?
That's the idea.
That's amazing. What else did they suggest?
Well, here's a tip that's particularly relevant for our digitally connected world, texting in English.
Oh, that's brilliant.
Right.
It's such a natural way to incorporate practice into your everyday life.
Absolutely.
And it's low stakes. You don't have to worry about making mistakes in front of a large audience.
Exactly. You can text friends, family, or even just practice with yourself in a notes app.
Right.
Just get those fingers typing.
I actually tried texting in Spanish with a friend who was learning.
Oh, fun.
And it was hilarious. We had to get really creative with emojis.
I bet.
To get our point across.
That's fantastic. It sounds like you were having fun while learning, which is always the goal.
For sure. And for those who are active online, the podcast suggests joining English-speaking groups on platforms like Reddit or Facebook.
Oh, yeah. Great idea.
Which is a great way to engage in conversations and practice reading and writing in a more informal setting.
It's like you're surrounding yourself with the language.
Right.
Even if you're not physically in an English-speaking environment.
Okay, this next writing challenge I thought was really intriguing.
Okay.
Writing a 100-word story.
Ooh.
I'm not sure I could tell a compelling story in just 100 words.
That's the challenge, right? It forces you to be concise and deliberate with your words.
Yeah.
And it's a valuable skill for any type of writing,
Right.
not just creative writing.
And they even give a fun example. Write about your dream vacation.
Oh, I love that.
Oh, I'd have so much fun with that. My dream vacation involves a private island, a talking parrot, and an endless supply of chocolate chip cookies.
That sounds amazing.
Yeah.
And you see, it's easy to get carried away and write pages and pages.
Right.
But the 100-word limit forces you to prioritize and streamline your ideas.
It's about making every word count, which again is a valuable skill for any writer.
Yeah, absolutely.
So the key takeaway here, once again, is regularity over perfection. Just like with speaking and reading.
Yeah.
It's about making writing a consistent habit.
Absolutely.
Even if it's just for a few minutes each day.
Exactly. It's about building a routine that works for you.
Right.
And sticking with it.
Okay.
And speaking of routine, they actually provide a sample daily plan.
Oh, this is what I was waiting for.
For incorporating all of these skills into your life.
I love it when they give you like a concrete plan to follow.
I know, right?
So let's break it down.
Okay, so it starts with listening to an English podcast for just 10 minutes in the morning.
Okay, totally doable.
Easy enough, right?
Yeah.
And then they suggest reading a short article for another 10 minutes in the afternoon.
Okay, like a little mini break.
It is.
For your brain, but with the added bonus of learning English.
Exactly. And it builds on what we've already discussed.
Yeah.
You can use one of the podcasts we mentioned earlier.
Right.
Or you can explore other resources based on your interests.
Okay.
And then in the evening, they suggest speaking out loud about your day for 5 minutes.
Okay, again, this links back to that idea of
Practicing even when you're alone.
Yeah.
Making it a part of your,
Right.
your natural thought process.
Right.
Yeah.
And then finally, before bed, they suggest spending 5 minutes writing a short journal entry.
Yeah, just a little recap of your day, but in English.
Exactly. And the best part is all of these activities are like bite-sized and manageable.
Yeah.
Even for the busiest of schedules.
Absolutely.
This roadmap is seriously genius.
It is.
And they even provide a final golden nugget of advice.
Okay.
Make English a part of your life.
It's such a powerful reminder that learning English isn't just about completing exercises or studying grammar rules.
Right.
It's about integrating the language into your everyday life.
Yeah.
Finding opportunities to think,
Yeah.
speak, and engage with English in authentic and meaningful ways.
I love that. It's about looking for those little moments throughout your day where you could just sprinkle in a bit of English practice.
Exactly, like thinking in English while you're grocery shopping.
Oh.
Listening to English music while you're cooking.
Right.
Or even watching a movie in English with subtitles.
Okay.
The possibilities are endless.
Yeah, it really is about creating your own personalized English immersion experience, isn't it?
That's exactly it. And it doesn't have to be this huge, overwhelming thing. It's about those small, consistent steps taken over time.
You know, going through this roadmap with you has been a real eye-opener. I feel like we've uncovered so many great tips and strategies.
Yeah.
And I'm actually excited to put them into practice myself.
Me too. It's so refreshing to see such a practical and, dare I say, enjoyable approach to language learning.
Yeah, and it all boils down to those 4 core skills, right? Listening, speaking, reading, and writing.
Absolutely.
We've covered each one in depth.
We have.
And I think we've really highlighted the importance of integrating them into your daily life.
Yes. And for me, the biggest takeaway from this deep dive is that consistency and enjoyment go hand in hand.
Right.
It's not about forcing yourself to study for hours on end.
Yeah.
It's about finding ways to make English a natural and enjoyable part of your daily routine.
I love that. It's about finding those little pockets of time throughout your day where you can connect with the language. Whether it's, listening to a podcast during your commute,
Yeah.
reading an article while you're waiting in line, or even just chatting with a language partner online.
Exactly. It's about those small, consistent actions that add up over time.
Right.
And when you enjoy the process,
Yeah.
you're so much more likely to stick with it and see real progress.
So what do you say? Are you up for a challenge?
Challenge accepted. Bring it on.
Okay, listeners, here's the challenge. Try following this roadmap for just 1 week.
Okay.
Commit to incorporating those daily habits we've been discussing. The listening, the speaking, the reading, the writing, even if it's just for a few minutes each day.
And most importantly, have fun with it.
Yes.
Don't be afraid to experiment with different resources and find what works best for you.
Right.
There's no right or wrong way to learn a language.
Exactly.
As long as you're enjoying the process.
This is just the beginning of your English learning journey. There's a whole world of language waiting to be explored. And with the right mindset and a little bit of effort, you can achieve fluency and unlock so many incredible opportunities.
I couldn't agree more. It's amazing how much you can achieve when you set your mind to it.
Right.
And embrace the process with enthusiasm and dedication.
And remember, we're here to support you every step of the way.
Absolutely.
Keep practicing, keep exploring.
Keep going.
And never stop believing in your ability to master this beautiful language.
Now, before we wrap things up completely,
Okay.
there's one final thought I want to leave you with.
Okay.
The podcast we explored today focuses specifically on the journey to fluency,
Uh-huh.
but I think it's important to remember that language learning is an ongoing process.
That's a great point. It's not like you reach fluency and then you suddenly stop learning, right?
Exactly. Language is constantly evolving, and there's always something new to discover.
Right.
Whether it's a nuanced grammatical structure, a regional dialect, or even just a new slang word that's trending online.
Right. So how do we keep that momentum going even after we've achieved, like, our initial fluency goals?
I think it's all about cultivating a mindset of lifelong learning.
Okay.
That genuine curiosity about the language and a willingness to embrace those inevitable challenges that come with exploring any new territory.
I love that. It's about seeing language learning not as a destination, but as an ongoing adventure.
Precisely. And that adventure can take you to some incredible places.
Yeah.
Both literally and figuratively.
I like that.
It can open doors to new cultures, new friendships, new perspectives, and a deeper understanding of the world around us.
What are some practical ways to kind of keep that adventure going?
Okay.
To keep that spark of curiosity alive?
Well, for one, don't be afraid to step outside your comfort zone and try new things.
Okay.
If you've been focusing mainly on reading and listening, challenge yourself to start speaking more.
Okay.
If you're comfortable with everyday conversations, try writing a short story or even a poem in English.
Those are great ideas. And I think it's also important to stay connected with the English-speaking community.
Yes.
Whether that's through, online forums or social media groups or even just chatting with English-speaking friends or colleagues.
Absolutely. It's about surrounding yourself with the language and finding opportunities to use it in authentic and meaningful ways.
Yeah.
And don't forget about the power of storytelling.
Ooh, I love a good story. What do you have in mind?
Think about all the incredible stories that are out there waiting to be discovered, from classic literature to contemporary novels,
Right.
from blockbuster movies to independent films, from TED Talks to podcasts like this one.
Okay, you're speaking my language now. I'm a total podcast junkie.
Me too. And podcasts are such a fantastic way to immerse yourself in the language, learn about different topics, and hear a variety of accents and speaking styles.
It's like having a conversation with interesting people from all over the world.
It is.
And the best part is, there's a podcast for literally every interest imaginable. I know, right? From true crime to history, from science to pop culture, from personal development to, language learning.
Exactly. So if you're looking for a way to keep your English skills sharp, expand your vocabulary, and stay engaged with the language, I highly recommend adding a few English language podcasts to your listening rotation.
And don't be afraid to branch out and explore different genres and formats. You might be surprised at what you discover.
Yeah.
And who knows? You might even find your new favorite podcast.
Exactly. So as we wrap up this deep dive,
Okay.
I want to leave you with one final challenge.
Okay, I like it.
What English language podcast are you going to explore next?
Ooh, that's a good one. And to make things even more interesting, how about we challenge our listeners to share their podcast recommendations with us on social media? We'd love to hear what you're listening to and what's inspiring you on your English learning journey.
That's a fantastic idea. We'll be sure to share some of our favorites as well.
This has been such an insightful and inspiring deep dive. I feel like we've uncovered a treasure trove of valuable information and practical tips for anyone looking to enhance their English skills.
I couldn't agree more. And remember, the most important thing is to enjoy the process and never stop exploring the wonders of this incredible language.
Until next time, happy learning.
Happy learning. So if you're looking for a way to keep your English skills sharp, expand your vocabulary, and stay engaged with the language, I highly recommend adding a few English language podcasts to your listening rotation.
And don't be afraid to branch out and explore different genres and formats. Yeah. You might be surprised at what you discover.
Yeah.
And who knows, you might even find your new favorite podcast.
Exactly. So as we wrap up this deep dive, I want to leave you with one final challenge.
Okay, I like it.
What English language podcast are you going to explore next?
Ooh, That's a good one. And to make things even more interesting, how about we challenge our listeners to share their podcast recommendations with us on social media? We'd love to hear what you're listening to and what's inspiring you on your English learning journey.
That's a fantastic idea. We'll be sure to share some of our favorites as well.
This has been such an insightful and inspiring deep dive. I feel like we've uncovered a treasure trove of valuable information and practical tips for anyone looking to enhance their English skills.
I couldn't agree more. And remember, the most important thing is to enjoy the process and never stop exploring the wonders of this incredible language.
Until next time, happy learning.
Happy learning.
And you never know, maybe one day our listener will be inspired to start their own podcast in English.
No, that's a thought. Sharing your unique perspective and voice with the world, all in your second language, that's really incredible.
Yeah?
It really speaks to how transformative language learning can be.
Absolutely. It's a journey of self-discovery, pushing boundaries, and ultimately connecting with others in a deeper way.
I think that that beautifully sums up what we've explored in this deep dive.
Yeah.
We started with that feeling of overwhelm. Then we uncovered this amazing roadmap packed with practical tips.
Right.
And now we're looking ahead to the endless possibilities that await.
It all started with a simple podcast episode you shared.
Yeah.
But look where we've ended up.
Right.
It's a reminder that every journey starts with a single step.
So to our listener, I encourage you, take that first step. Embrace the process, the ups and downs, and never stop exploring the beauty and power of the English language.
And on that note, until next time, happy learning.
Happy learning.